Hey there. So in this particular video, we are going to build an AI-based email reply generator. And we are going to not just build a web app and the backend for this, but actually we are also going to build a Chrome extension for this, which is going to integrate into Gmail, and it is going to help us generate the AI-based replies for all the emails that we receive. So it's actually an application that you can use to generate email replies for your own emails, and also you can deploy it elsewhere to make it available for the use of public. Okay, so that's what we are going to explore, and this particular course is also going to help you understand the power of AI and Spring Boot as to how you can consume Spring Boot APIs from different parts of the or from different applications essentially. All right, so let me give you a demonstration of what we are going to build. So this is a front end. We'll talk about front end in a bit, but in case of backend, or in terms of backend, we are going to make use of Gemini API over here. We're going to create a REST API that is going to help us generate the response, which is AI generated based on the email content and the tone that we share. So we also have an option to set the tone for the email. We can also share the email content, as you can see, and you will get a response based on this. So if you say send over here, you're going to get the response basis what the content was. Okay, this is one. Also, if you're not familiar with AI or how you can consume AI APIs, I'm going to explain everything to you as to how you can start consuming the Gemini API. So I'll give you a full tutorial and how the API works, how the response should be, how the response is, and how the request is, basically both the parts of request and response. Okay, these all things will cover. So you'll be realizing that you implement or create the backend API with ease, okay, after knowing these details. And then we move on to front end, wherein we'll be building the front end, and you can paste any sort of email over here. Okay, so let's say I have this email here. This is a dummy email. I can paste it over here, and I can mention the tone as casual, and I can say generate a reply. So it will generate a reply for me, you can see, and you have an option to copy to clipboard. Okay, so this is basically a browser based application that you can host anywhere in the world, and if you make it available for public, anyone will be able to generate an email or generate a reply for the emails that they receive. Okay, so this is one. You can basically modify this according to the tone, like professional or any sort of tone, friendly or none over here. Okay, now this is a web application, but when it comes to emails or replying to emails, it's best if you basically integrate the application into your email application, right? So for example, Gmail is one of the world's most powerful email application. Now let's say I have this email coming in from someone. Okay, this is a dummy email that I have sent to myself. I got this email from someone. Now I won't be wanting to copy this and sending it over here on the application, then copying the reply and pasting it over here. Of course, you can do this, but there is an easier way, right? So what if you could integrate your application into the Gmail's UI? So that is something that I'm going to show you. So if you say reply over here, you'll see this button up here, AI reply button. This is coming in from our application. This is coming in from our application. How is it coming in? Because we are loading this using the Chrome extension. So we have loaded this Chrome extension, as you can see. This is the Chrome extension that we have built, and we are integrating our application into the Gmail's interface using this extension. So I'm going to give you a step-by-step tutorial. Like, we're going to go granular. We are going to make a hello world extension first, and then I'll take you as to how you can build this extension for your application. So first we'll cover the nitty-gritties of an extension, what an extension is, how extension works. We'll create a very simple extension first, and then we'll create this extension. So don't worry if you have never built Chrome extensions. Don't get overwhelmed as to, oh my god, I'm going to build this and I won't be able to. Don't worry about that. I take you step by step. Okay, and it's a completely step-by-step course, and you can follow it along, and there are timestamps available as well. You can skip the parts if you know something. Okay, if you know something that I'm already talking about. So you can see this AI reply button. Now if I click on this AI reply, it will basically generate an AI based reply for this content over here, and I don't need to do anything. So I'll say AI reply, and you can see it generated this reply for me based on the email. So you can see Hey, dear John, it picked up the name over here. So hey there, John here. So it says, dear John, it was pleasure connecting with you at AWS Summit last week. My startup is progressing well. We are currently, and here it has given you a placeholder wherein you can add some sort of current progress or some sort of, it is giving you giving you points as well, the placeholders, as to like what is your focus, whether you're launching your MVP or expanding your team. You can mention whatever your focus is. I'd be happy to update you further when I have more to share. How are things going with you? And work at, mention the company if you know what it is. Okay, or you can get, just if you don't know the company, you can just get rid of this. And regards, Faisal. You can see. So this is a completely AI generated response, and this is something that we'll learn. What we are doing is we have created an extension and we are consuming the Spring Boot APIs, right? So you can even publish this extension, and this is a great addition to your portfolio as well. So if you're looking for jobs, if you are a fresher, and if you want a resume ready project, then this is something that you can add to your portfolio. Or if you want, if you already have a job and if you're looking to switch to another company, and if you want to showcase some interesting projects in your resume, let me tell you, projects are everything. What projects you have built. Okay, if you're a fresher, people would want to know what sort of applications you have built, whether you have built something on your own, whether you know Spring Boot, whether you know front-end dev, whether you understand how apps are built. All these things interviewer would want to know from you. Okay, and it's important that you have some sort of portfolio projects in your portfolio, and this will help you do that. Okay, so it's a very good project to add to your resume. It's a very unique one as well, wherein you are creating an extension and consuming the Spring Boot APIs, and you have a front-end application as well, right? So I hope this sounds exciting. You can hit the send button and it will get sent. Okay, but I'm going to say delete over here. So even if you have a chain of replies over here, is what I mean to say. Even if you have a chain of replies, if you say reply, you will get this AI reply button. And we have actually injected this into the Gmail's interface, and it looks exactly like a Gmail button. So how can we do this? All of this I'm going to show you. Okay, so I hope you are excited about this project, and I hope you are ready. So be sure to watch this video till the very end. Don't skip any parts. There is a lot of knowledge packed in, and if you're liking this kind of content that I'm bringing in, be sure to comment below and let me know that you appreciate this content. Or if you have any sort of feedback, I'm all ears. Be sure to comment below and let me know. Also, let me know who you are, where you're joining in from, and what's your name, what you do. Basically, introduce yourself. I would love to know you more. And yes, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like this particular video. That helps a lot for creators like me, right? Because this is a free tutorial, of course. This is a fees that I can say, a subscription, and a like is a fees, is what I can say. And sharing it with your friends, of course, if they are looking for similar sort of projects or they're looking for jobs. So you should say, share it with them, because they would be benefited from this free stuff, right? And it's a very high quality content. And yeah, I'll see you inside the video. Do watch it till the very end. Thank you. So now it's time that we begin setting up our Spring Boot project. And to create the Spring Boot project, we will head over to Spring Initializer on start.spring.io. Now, of course, we'll choose the configurations that we need in our project over here. So I'm going to select Maven, since I'll be making use of Maven. You can choose Gradle if you wish to. Language is Java. I'll select the latest version, non-snapshot latest version of Spring Boot. And here I'm going to say, I'm going to like enter the group over here. So what is the group? I'll say com.email over here, and artifact can be email writer over here, email writer, something like this. And here I'll just change the package name manually. So I'll say com.email.writer. That seems good, right? So this is, so I'll say this can be SB over here. Artifact can be SB. And this I'll say writer over here, because this auto updates. Okay, so this is the package name that I'm going ahead with, com.email.writer. And here I have this packaging and Java version 17 selected. You can choose the Java version to be 23 or whichever version is available as you are watching this video. Now Spring Boot version might change. You might see some different version number over here. Okay, but feel free to choose whichever version is the latest, and be sure not to select this snapshot version. So here, when you come to add dependencies, we'll add a few dependencies that we need for our project. So first dependency is web. It's a web project. We'll be building the REST API. So I'll add web over here. We'll also add Lombok, which is a annotation library which can help us reduce some sort of boilerplate code. Pretty helpful. I'll add that as well. And we'll need Webflux over here. Okay, so Webflux, basically it helps building web applications. So we'll add it, or we'll add it when we need. Okay, so I'm not adding it. Okay, let's see if we need it. I'm just adding two dependencies for now, Spring Web and Lombok over here. All right, you can head over to Explore and take a look at the pom.xml if everything looks fine. Or else you can say generate and download the zip file. Now, when I say generate, a zip file will be generated and downloaded onto my system. Just save it to your workspace. Workspace meaning where you will be, the folder on your system where you will be building this particular application. So I'll quickly do that. So here you can see I've downloaded the zip file, and this is a folder where I will be building this entire application. So I have the Spring Boot project here. And then I'll be adding the React project or any sort of front end in Angular, React, whatever you wish to add, you can add over here. Okay, so this helps you organize things. Okay, just from the organization standpoint, I'll just say right click now and we'll just extract this folder over here. So just unzip it, and here you have the entire project. Okay, now what you would do is come over here to IntelliJ, make sure IntelliJ is open, and just say open. And navigate to the directory that you have unzipped just now. So here I said open, and I have navigated to the directory where I've unzipped this. And I'll select pom.xml from email writer SB. So just select pom.xml and not the folder over here. Okay. So pom.xml, because it has the entire project information. Now it is going to ask you, how do you want to open pom.xml? Because pom.xml is a part of a project, right? So IntelliJ is smart enough to detect this, and it is asking us whether you would want to open this as a project. So I'll say open as a project, not as a file. It's asking me whether the IntelliJ should trust all the projects in this folder. I'll say yes, trust, because I'm the one who created this folder. Okay, this is just from the security standpoint over here. Right, and now you'll see that the project is basically loaded. Okay, you can see the entire project being loaded over here. Dependencies being resolved here at the bottom right. Okay, so you can see all the dependencies are being downloaded, and these dependencies are the dependencies that you have added in pom.xml. So Java is doing a great job, or Maven is doing a great job of getting all the dependencies locally. Right, so that's the thing. We have our project up and running, and you can see, you can go through the project here. You can see src folder, idea folder. So idea folder is created by IntelliJ. We are not going to touch this. This is all workspace related information, the project related information. You have .mvn. This is something that is also auto generated. We are not going to touch this. Where are we going to work? We are going to work within src folder. This is where our source code will reside. Like under Java, we are going to have all the Java source, and under resources, we are going to have all the resources related, like static templates, any sort of static files, or any sort of configuration that you want to add to application.properties. Okay, you have this file pom.xml, which is the file that has the entire project information along with the dependencies. So if you want to update dependencies or any sort of project information, we'll make use of pom.xml. Okay, so this is our project structure, and we are ready to go to the next step. So now it's time that we begin exploring the Google's Gemini API. This is what we are going to use, and what we are going to do is we are going to head over to google.com over here, and I would request you all to search for Gemini API, or you can even search for Google Gemini API. And when you search, you will find that you will get this URL over here, ai.google.dev, and you can see Gemini Developer API. So I would request you to open this particular URL and head over to this website. Now, this is a landing page that you would see, or you would be welcomed with. Now, one disclaimer I would want to add over here, Google updates this website every now and then. You know, like this field of AI is evolving so fast, so they are updating the website every now and then. And now, depending on when you're watching this video, you might see a completely different UI over here. But don't worry, the core concepts of how you can make use of API still remains the same. So there will be few UI tweaks that Google might do or might not do. I don't know. All right. But if you see some UI tweaks, that's absolutely fine and nothing to worry about. You will still be able to follow this video. So if you scroll down, here you have an option to explore models in Google AI Studio. And here you have all these things that are demonstrated. So you can integrate Google AI model with an API key into apps. You can explore Google AI models and so on. You can like go through the entire website over here. Okay. And if you scroll up over here, I'll just click on explore models in Google AI Studio. But before clicking on this, I would want to talk about something. So if you go over here under models, you'll see something called as pricing. So head over to pricing over here. Now, there are different models that exist, like even with ChatGPT, Google Gemini, there are different models with different abilities that exist. So here you can see, as I'm recording this video, Gemini 1.5 Flash is available. And depending on when you're watching the video, you might see some latest model like above Gemini 1.5 Flash that are better than this model exist, right? Because this field of AI is evolving so fast that there is a new model in the market every few months, right? So depending on when you're watching this video, you might see a new model, but don't worry. The details I'm going to show you is also going to apply to any new models that come over. So if you scroll down over here, you are going to see the pricing of this model. You will see over here, it's free of charge. So Google has this good thing wherein they have a free tier, a generous free tier is what I would say. So you can see over here in this free tier, you get this input pricing free of charge, output pricing free of charge. There is a rate limit on how you use this API. And you can try it in Google AI Studio. And so this free tier, first of all, is very helpful if you are trying to like create some sort of POCs or some sort of projects to add to your resume or portfolio to get a better job. Also, this free tier is useful if you're trying to build a product that solves a particular problem and you plan to convert it into paying and if you plan to convert it into a paid subscription later on. So when you start making money from the product and if you have enough traffic, you can switch over to pay as you go model as well. Okay. And you can see over here, the rate limits and all vary as compared to the free plan. So if you have a project in mind that you are that is solving a particular problem and you wish to charge your users for the same, you can start with the free tier and you can later on upgrade to the paid version as your application scales. Okay. But free tier is good for most of the use cases is what I've realized, and they have a pretty generous free tier. All right. And you don't need to spend a dime. Okay. So I'll come over here to homepage and I'll click on explore models in Google AI Studio. Now here you'll be taken to Google AI Studio. All right. You can like play around with the studio over here. You can type in some sort of information over here, like ask something to AI and you can play around. Okay. You can get a recipe list, city scavenger, recipe finder, and so on. And you can switch over the models here from here and you can experiment with the models over here. Okay. So this is a playground. You can adjust the temperature, structured output, and all these settings, right? Now, what we need to do is we need to integrate Google Gemini and we need to get API key for that. So I'll click over here. You can see over here, get API key. So if I click over here, you'll be taken to this page wherein you have an option or a button to create an API key. Now, I already have a few API keys already created. So I'm not going to create an API key, but the process is pretty simple. You can say create an API key and it will ask you to select a project and then it will give you the API key. Absolutely free of cost. All right. Now here, how would you use the API key? So here at the top, you'll see this code. Okay. It says quickly test Gemini API. And here you have a curl request. Okay. So you can make use of this request to make use of API key. And also you have this API quick start guide, which you can click on. And you'll be taken to this particular page. Okay. You can also go to this page from the website as well. So if you come over here under solutions, okay, let me go to solutions. And if you say Gemini API, you'll see here quick start, right? So it's the same page that we came in from here, right? Now here what you will see is how you can make use of Gemini, Google Gemini across different programming languages like Python, Node.js. You can select Node.js, Golang, or with any or in the REST format. Basically, you will get the curl request over here, and this is the same curl request that you're seeing here on the dashboard. Okay, so we need to test this curl request to see what kind of input this API needs and what kind of output we can expect, because we want to integrate this into our application. So I'll copy this to clipboard. All right, I'll come over here to Postman. Now in Postman, what I would request you all is to create a workspace. First of all, you need to have Postman installed onto your system. So Postman or any sort of API client that helps you simulate an API request. So I make use of Postman. You create a collection over here, new collection. I've created this collection called Gemini API. And here you can say import. So we have copied the curl request. So I would import this request. I'll come over here and you'll see this pop-up wherein you can paste the curl request, raw text, or a URL. So I'll paste the curl request. And what it will do is it will identify the request. It will show you the request over here. And it will give you the request name over here. So request name is Gemini API over here, right? I'm giving a custom name. You can give whatever name you wish to. And it's telling me under which collection you want to create this request. So I'll say Gemini API over here, because that's what the name of my collection. And I'll say import into collection. So you can see this has been imported into the collection. I'll collapse this sidebar. And here now you have to add the API key. Okay, if you go to body, here you can add any sort of prompt. So here the default prompt is explain how AI works. So what I will do is I will come over here and the API key that I have generated in the dashboard, I'll add it over here. So let me do that for you. So I have added my own API key in the params tab over here. Okay, and I have this thing over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say send, and I'll get a response from Gemini, Google's Gemini, as to how AI works. So it will explain me how AI works. And you can see over here, this is the structure of the response. You can see this is the explanation of how AI works by AI. Okay, so if you see over here, okay, first it needs a param wherein you're passing in the API key, and the API also needs the request body in the form of JSON in this way. And here you can see you have contents, you have parts, then you have the text. Oops. So then you have the text which has the prompt that you want to add to, or that you want to send to Google Gemini. Okay, and the response you get is in this format. Okay, so there is a format that you need to use to get the data from the API. So if you scroll up over here, you'll see there is candidates, content, parts, and text. Now this is the text that you get as the response. And you can see role is model, finish reason is stop. And if you see over here, usage metadata. So it is also giving you usage metadata like prompt token count, candidate token count, and total token count, and also the model version that was used to generate this response. Now, what is token? So when it comes to making use of AI models, the amount of usage that is happening is calculated in the form of tokens, and you are basically priced, or you're basically charged depending on how much token or how many tokens you're using. So if you head over here to basically pricing, let me check the pricing over here. Okay, oops, I opened multiple tabs accidentally. So here, if you go to pricing, okay, we don't have, okay, here you can see these are tokens, right? 1 million tokens per minute, 1,500 requests per day, you can see. So here you can see tokens already. So it's making use of tokens, and that is the information that you get over here as well. So this request generated how many tokens or made use of how many tokens. All right. So I hope you have a good sense of how you can make use of the API. Now this structure, understanding this structure, like the body, request body, and the output structure is important, and it gives you an insight into how this API is, how you can make use of this API in the applications, because you have to make sure that the input that you are giving to the API is in this format and the output you are getting should be in this format. And this is important. Understanding the output is important so that you can parse it properly and make use of the output in a sensible way. All right. So I hope this is clear, and I hope you have been able to follow along. So now it's time that we begin writing in the code over here in our application that will help us generate the response to emails. So what I'm going to do is here in the main package, I'll come in and I'll create a new controller over here. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to say new Java class, and I'm going to call this as email generator controller. Okay. You can call it whatever you want to. Okay. And it's called email generator controller. Now for the first thing that I will do over here is I will basically annotate it with some relevant annotations like REST controller, request mapping. Oops. So I'll say request mapping over here, and I'll map this entire controller to /API/email over here. And yeah, that is it. And here what I'm going to do is I am going to have a method. So I'm going to say public response entity over here. And I'm going to say the response is a string. And I'll say generate email over here, something like this. And here I'm going to say in the request body, just have an object of email request over here. And you say email request over here. And here what you do is, so I'll just collapse this so that we get better view. Now email request is a DTO class that does not exist yet. Of course, we will be creating it, right? And here what we will do is inside this method, I'm going to return, I'm going to say response entity and response entity dot okay. And I'm going to pass in some data over here. Now it won't be an empty string. Of course, there will be some data that we will return, which is basically the email, the generated email response. That is what we are going to generate, and we are going to send this as a response. Okay. For now, we are getting this error called email request. Now, one thing I'll tell you over here, I am creating everything in this main package. Okay. What you can do is, if you want to organize things, you can have a sub package called email writer app over here, and you can simply move the controller and all the other relevant files inside over here. Okay, I'm not just creating too many packages over here like controller, service and all of that. I'm keeping things simple because it's just one API that we need to create, right? So here I'm creating this is done. Now what I need to do is I need to create email request. So I'll come over here. Okay, I'll say create class email request. Now it will create this class email request in this directory. I'll say okay. And inside email request, I need to define the structure over here. So I'm going to say private string, and I'll say email content over here, and I'll say private string tone over here. Okay. And here I'll have for data annotation from Lombok, which will help me generate the getters, setters, and constructor. Okay. So I'll add this. This is done. And what we will do now is we also need a service class, right? The service is something we need and we have not created that. So I'll come over here. I'll create a service. So I'll say new Java class. I'll say email generator service over here. And here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first thing annotate it with the service annotation. All right, this is done. And here, what we are going to do is we are going to prepare this particular service to help us make an API call. Now, it is going to help us make an API call by calling this particular API for Gemini. Okay, so this Gemini model is something that we are going to query. Now, to begin with, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a public string. So string would be the response over here. I'm going to say string and it will say generate email reply over here. Okay. And here I'm going to say email request and I'm going to say email request over here. Okay. Something like this. All right. Now here we need to do certain things. So first thing is we need to build the prompt. Okay. Build the prompt. So this is a prompt that will go as an input to the backend. Right. So this is what we are going to do. So we are going to build the prompt first, and then, so this prompt is basically going to go to the Gemini API, right? And then over here, we are going to craft a request over here. Now, why craft a request? Because here, if you must have noticed, the request is supposed to be in a certain format. You cannot just directly dump the prompt in the request body. You have to like follow this format wherein you have content. Then within that, then content is is having a array value which has like parts over here, right? Now parts is also an array. So we have to follow this format over here, and then we will actually do the request. Okay, do request and get response, and then we are going to return the response. Okay, now this is what we are going to do entirely. All right, and for this we will be creating helper methods as well. Okay, so let us come over here. I'm going to say string prompt. So this is a prompt that we will have, and I'll create a method over here called build prompt. Now this method does not exist. Of course, we'll be creating it. Like I said, it will take email request as a parameter. Okay, I'm seeing this error over here. I'll say create method build prompt. Okay, this is done. This is the method. Now how are we going to craft the prompt? So here if you come, okay, email request, here it's returning null. So I'll come over here just above this. Here I'm going to make use of string builder. First of all, string builder, I'll say prompt is equal to new string builder, like so. Okay, so it's an empty string builder object that I've created. I'll say prompt dot append. Okay, and I'll say generate a professional email reply for reply. It has to be reply for the following email content. Okay, so this is what I'm saying. Okay, and I don't need a subject line, so I'm going to say, because it's a reply, right? So I'll say please don't generate a subject line, something like this. Okay, so I'll add a space over here, right? And here if you see, email request has two things. One is the email content and the tone. Okay. So email content is the content of the email that you're crafting reply for. Tone is how you want the tone of the reply to be. Whether you want to be professional, sarcastic, or you want this to be, funny, casual. So you can pass in tone as a parameter as well. Or I anyways have hard-coded professional over here if tone is not provided. Okay. So we'll do a check for tone over here. So I'll say if request dot tone over here, if tone exists, if get tone, then I'm going to check over here if it's not equal to null. And I'm going to do one more check. I'm going to say if request dot get tone is empty. Okay, get tone dot is empty. Then in that case, what you do is you can append over here prompt dot append. And you can say use a something like this, and you can say dot append over here, append, and you can say email request dot get tone over here, like so, and dot append outside, and you can say tone followed by space, something like this. So what this will give you is, it will say generate a professional email reply for the for the following email content. Please don't generate, okay, there is a typo. Please don't generate a subject line. And then we are saying if there is a tone parameter present, then please say use a, whatever the tone is there that we append, and we say please use a casual tone if casual is the value of tone field. Okay, or if it's sarcastic, we say please use a sarcastic tone or something like that. Okay. So this is done, this is crafted, and then what we do is we will say prompt dot append over here. Prompt dot append, and I'm going to say /n over here. I'm going to say original email. I'll say colon, and we'll simply append the original email. So I'll say /n over here, and I'll say dot append. Okay, and append is request dot get email content. So we have this email content which is keeping track of the email content. So I get that. And here what I'm going to do is, once I have this prompt crafted, I'm going to say return prompt dot toString over here, like so. Okay, so this build prompt is ready now. Okay, we are like crafting this prompt, and then what we have to do is here, this is done. Okay, so this prompt we have now, prompt is crafted. Right? What we need to do is we need to as a next step, we need to craft a request. How would you craft a request? So request needs this kind of a format over here, right? This is how the request is supposed to be sent. So here you will have the prompt, right? But this outer part like content parts and the structure you need to create. Okay. So I'm going to make use of map over here since the request needs a key value pair. So you can see here key and value everywhere. You have key and value. So key value pair is there. So you can say map of string over here and object like so. And then I'm going to say request body over here. And you can say map dot off. Now here I'll add a semicolon. And here we are going to say contents. Okay, so this is contents. You can see contents. And then within contents, you have this array, right? So I'm going to say comma, new object. Okay, new object. Okay, this has to be array object like so. And here I'm going to say, here what we need is, we have parts and then text, okay, within this. So I'm going to again say, so this is a map again if you see. You can see there is curly brace. So this is the outer part. And then you have this inner part which resembles the outer part. You can see this part. And then you have the inner part again which resembles the outer part like so. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say map of, and here you can say parts, comma, new object. And here I'll say map of, and here I'm going to say text, and then comma and prompt, something like this. Okay. So you have, so here you are crafting a request body. First of all, you're seeing map of contents. Now within contents, you have an object, new object. And then within this, you are seeing map of parts. Okay. And then you are seeing map of text over here, which is also prompt like so. Okay. Now after this, what we need to do is, this is how the request will be, right? This is how the request will be. Now after this, we need to actually do the request and get the response. Okay, do the request and get the response. Now for doing the request, what you need is, you will need the API key, right? There is an API key and the URL as well. Now you can hard code the API key and the URL here in the code itself, but I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to scroll up at the top. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say private string Gemini API URL, something like this. And here I'm going to say private string Gemini API key, something like this. Okay. Now I'm going to get this injected from the properties file. So I'm going to say @value annotation over here. I'm going to make use of value annotation, and I'm going to say $ followed by a pair of opening and closing curly brace. I'm going to say Gemini.api.url over here, something like this. Okay. And I'm going to copy this. I'm going to make use of, I'm going to paste this API dot, I'm going to say key over here. Okay. Now I've copied this API.url, and I'll come over here to application.properties. So you can make use of properties file, or you can convert this into a YAML file. That's absolutely okay. I'll just stick to properties. This is the URL and this is the key over here, something like this. Okay. Now we need to add the URL here as well as the key. So what I will do is, I'll make use of env variables. Okay. I'm not going to hard code stuff in the code. Okay. I'm going to say Gemini API URL, or Gemini URL. I'll keep it short, something like this. And here I'm going to say Gemini _ key. Now how will you get these values injected? So I'll copy these and I'll come over here. Okay. So here, if you come, what you need to do is, here if you come to application file, okay, if you run this application once, so we cannot run it because we'll get an error, but let me run it. So there will be a run configuration being added over here once you run it. So just go to main application file and just run this. You'll get an error, of course, I know. Enable Lombok annotation processing. So just select this because we are making use of Lombok. So you can see this configuration added. Ignore the error because the code is not complete. We know that we'll get an error. So you can go to edit configurations, and here you will see environment variables. Now, if you don't see this for any reason, you can select environment variables from here. Modify options, environment variables. You can check this. Okay. Come over here. What you need to do is you need to like paste this Gemini API URL. You can see the syntax over here. Separate variables with a semicolon. Right. So you can add the URL here. Okay. And then you can add a semicolon. And then you can basically add API Gemini key over here. Something like this. And you can assign that over here. Something like this. Okay. And you can head over to browser first of all. And here you'll see this URL. Okay. This is a URL. Right. So just get the URL. Now from the URL, what you can do is we don't need the entire URL actually. So from the URL, just remove this Gemini API key part. Okay. Just remove this Gemini API key and here just add your key. Now, after you add your key over here, just say apply and say OK. Don't miss pressing apply. Otherwise, these changes won't be applied. So what we are doing over here is with this, we are setting the environment variables here this way. And these environment variables will be injected over here when the application runs using this run configuration. Okay, so we are saying during the execution of this application, this is the configuration that is supposed to be used. Now, if you are not a fan of adding environment variables this way, you can click over here. You can see this button and here you have an option to add it using a graphical user interface. So you can like add Gemini API key and all of that over here. Okay, something like that. You can like add using plus and remove it. But I prefer this approach. Okay, so I'll add my API key and I'll say apply and I'll say OK over here. So I've added my API key and here what will happen is when you run the application, the API key and the URL will be injected here. And you will also get the URL and the key over here in these variables. Okay. Now what we need to do is we need to do an API call using this URL and the key along with the prompt and get the response and return it as a part of this method. Now here for making an API call, we are going to make use of web client. Okay. It's a way to do a API request. Okay, it's built on top of Project Reactor and it enables us to handle asynchronous non-blocking HTTP requests and responses. It makes this thing well suited for modern reactive web applications. And for this, we are going to need a dependency over here, which will be webflux. Okay, so I'll come over here to my browser and I'll head over to start.spring.io over here. And here just say add dependency and say webflux. Okay, so webflux, reactive web. So if you search for reactive web, you will see this. Okay, and go to explore and just get this. Okay, so you have React over here, this one, and the webflux. So just copy this webflux also. Come over here. Okay, and add the dependency over here. And then come over here again and just copy this dependency of reactor and then come over here and paste it in your pom.xml. So after doing this, just reload Maven changes and you will see the dependencies being added into your project. Okay, so we are going to make use of web client. Okay, so what I will do is I will come over here again to my service. Okay, and here we are going to scroll up. Something like this, and here I'm going to say private final web client, and I'm going to say web client over here, and we need to get this injected, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a constructor. So I'm going to say add a constructor parameter, or you can make use of Lombok as well, but I'll just add a constructor parameter. You can see, so this will be injected during the runtime by Spring. And then we'll scroll down over here. Okay, and here we'll say string response. So we need to get the response. I'm going to say web client dot post because this is a post request, right? I'm going to say what is the URI? URI is we have Gemini API URL plus the Gemini API key, something like this. Okay, then come over here, add the headers. Okay, so what is a header? Header is content type, and I'll say comma application /JSON. Okay, and then we need to say retrieve over here, and then we'll say body to mono, and I'm going to say convert this to string class. We need to add a string class, and then here if you scroll down, I'll say block over here. So this is what you need to make use of. Okay, and then we need to return the response, right? So returning the response, we will have to extract the content over here and get the response over here, right? Because if you see over here, the response that you get is in this format, right? The response you get in this format, but this is the actual response for the email. This part will have the response for the email, right? So you need to extract this and return this in the API, right? So what I will do is I'll say return extract response content over here, and I'm going to pass in the response over here, something like this. Now this is a method that exists that will help us extract the response. Okay, so here instead of returning the response, I'll say return extract response and return, something like this. Okay, this will be the final step. We actually need to extract the response as well, because response is not in the format that we might desire, right? So what I will do is I'll create this method here. This method is created, right? We have this response. I'm going to say try catch over here, add a try catch block. Oops. So let me see, try. Okay, try, and we have catch over here with exception over here, E, and I'll say E, or I can say return error processing request, and I'm going to say E dot get message. Okay, so I'm going to say plus E dot get message, something like that. Okay, this is done. We're seeing a warning. String can be replaced with a template. So it's giving us this suggestion. You can replace this with a string template. Okay, it's also throwing an error. I'll just do Control Z and I'll stick to this. Okay. So here within try block, we need to create a object of object mapper over here. Object mapper. I'm going to say mapper, and I'm going to say new object mapper. Okay. So this is something that we make use of, and I'm going to say JSON node, because we need to like iterate through JSON, the JSON response, right? So I'm going to say root node over here is equal to mapper dot read tree, and I'm going to say response. Okay. Now we have this object of root node. Now I'm going to say return. So we'll extract the text, right? From this entire thing, we need to extract the text. So I'm going to say root node. Okay. Now from root node, we need to navigate, right? We need to navigate the JSON tree. So understand this. What we are doing is we are making use of object mapper. Now what is object mapper? If you hover on this, it's coming in from Jackson. Okay. So what it does is it's a tool from the Jackson library that helps in working with JSON data. So it can read, write, and convert JSON data to Java objects and Java objects to JSON data. So vice versa, right? And then with this, what we are doing is we are making use of JSON node over here, right? So read tree is a method that turns the response or the JSON response into a tree-like structure. Now this tree-like structure is being represented by JSON node, and it represents the entire JSON tree. And using this root node, that is an object of type JSON node, we can navigate through the entire tree. That's the benefit. Okay, so I'm going to say dot. Here you can see we have path. So first I'm going to get candidates, something like this. Okay, candidates. Okay, it's better you copy from here candidates so that there are no typos. Candidates. I'm going to say dot get. I'm going to say 0 over here. Okay, I'm going to say dot path. What is the path? Path is content. Okay, so I'm getting the first thing or the first item of candidates array. Here you can see this is an array. So I got this, and then I'm getting content over here. Okay, so I'm saying path content. Okay, so it looks for content field inside the first candidate, and then from there I'm getting parts. Oops, sorry, path. I have to say path, and then it's parts, something like this. So over here you have parts, right? Now inside parts, what I need to do is I need to get the first item in parts, right? Because you can see it's an array again, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this get 0 and I'm going to add it again over here. Okay, so get 0 again. And then what we need to do is we need to get text, right? You need to get text from this array. So what I will do is I'll copy this and here I'll say got text, something like this. Okay, so I have text and then in the end I'll say dot as text, because you can see as text returns a string. So it is converting it into a string, right? And then I'll like just add a semicolon. So this is just returning the text that we have inside the response, right? So you are actually returning this extract response content from the service. And if you come over here, we are not making use of this service class yet that we have defined, right? So what I will do is here, first of all, I'll map this to post, like post mapping. I'll say this relates to generate over here, something like this. And then over here, I'm going to say response. Okay, and I'm going to say string response is equal to email generator service. Okay, so we need a service. The service is not yet auto wired over here. So we'll make use of service first of all. So I'll say private final email generator service. And I'll say email generator service, something like this. And here we need to get this auto injected. So here I'll make use of all args constructor from Lombok. And here I can say email generator service dot generate email reply, and I'll pass in the email request like so. Okay. And over here, I'm going to say dot OK. And here instead of empty string, I'll return the response. Okay. This is done. So we have this application ready now. Let us test this. So I'll run this application. Okay. And make a note. Okay. This is not initialized in the default constructor. It's not initialized, but I've added this Lombok annotation. So it's not picking Lombok annotation. If you face this issue, just head over to preferences first of all. Okay. Preferences you'll find in, preferences you'll find over here. Settings. On Mac, it's called preferences. Here it is called settings. Okay. Come over here. Head over to like collapse this appearances. Head over to build, compiler, and annotation processing. Here you have to make sure that enable annotation processing is there. And if you select this module over here, annotation profile for email writer SB, this is our project. You have to make sure that this is selected. Obtain processors from project class path. And you have to say apply. Okay. And then try running it. Okay. It should run now. So some configuration issue in the ID. That's it. Okay. We get an error. So what is an error? The error says, what is the error? Oh, here, if you scroll up. Okay. So here it says, email writer dot email requires this web client that could not be found. All right. So for this, we need to tweak our constructor over here. Okay. So this is here what we need to do is we need to say web client dot builder. Okay. So I'll make use of builder over here, web client dot builder. And I have web client build over here. And then I'll say this dot web client is equal to web client builder dot build. Okay. So we need to change this constructor logic to something like this. So we are making use of web client dot builder, and we are building a object of web client. And then if you run this, let us see if this runs now. It should run ideally. It runs now, right? So what is our endpoint? Our endpoint is, if you come to controller, it's API/email/generate. Okay, so it's API/email/generate. Something like this. So I'm going to cut this over here. Cut this. Go over to Postman. Okay. Create a collection. I'm going to create a blank collection. I'm going to call this email writer. Something like this. And here I'll add a request. It has to be a post request. Okay. I'll paste the URL. Oops. So it has to be localhost. So I'll say localhost http://localhost:8080, and then I'll paste this. Okay. Now inside this you need two things, right? here I'll say raw. The data should be raw type. Here you need two things. So one is the tone and the other thing is the request body. So I'm going to add a pair of curly braces. I'm going to say email content, something like this. And here I'm going to add the email content. And here I'm going to say tone, colon, the tone over here. Okay. So the tone will be friendly. And the email content is hello. Maybe you can add some email content. Hello. Thank you for reaching out to us, probably. Okay. Just trying this out. Okay. You can add any sort of email content. Tone is friendly. And you can say send over here. Let us see what is the response you get. Okay. Internal server error. Let us see what the error is. If you scroll in over here. Okay. Scroll up. So here you can see, okay, with root cause 400 bad requests. Okay, so some sort of problem over here. Let us see what the problem is. So errors are inevitable. Okay, you will get errors. That's absolutely okay. So come over here. And here, if you take a look at the API call, I realize that we are not sending in the request body. Okay, so here just after the header, we'll say body value. And we'll set in the request body that we have over here. Okay, so that I'm setting, and let us rerun the application and let us see if it works this time. So the API call that was happening to Gemini, Google Gemini, was happening without a request body in the earlier case, and that is why we got an error. Let us test and see if it works fine now. Okay, so you can see, hi sender name, it was pleasure hearing from you. Please let me know how can I help. So this is the output that you're getting, and this output is passed, and basically we have passed the data that we are getting from the Google Gemini. Okay, and we are parsing it using this. We are extracting it, I would say. Okay, I hope this has been useful, and I hope you have been able to follow along. So now it's time that we are going to begin building the React front-end for our application, and for the same, we are going to make use of Vite build tool. So you can go to this website, vite.dev, and you can come over here to guide over here, and you can read more about Vite. Okay, so it basically helps you do faster development, and it's basically for modern web projects. So I'll come over here, and here you should have some steps for installation. You don't. So let us go to config, plugins, resources. Okay, guide. Ideally, guide should have the installation steps over here. So here on getting started itself, if you scroll down a bit, you will see the kind of framework it supports. Okay, it supports vanilla, JavaScript, Vue, JS, React, and so on. If you scroll down, you will have some configuration steps for configuring Vite over here. So I'm going to make use of this command. I'll copy this command, come over here to your terminal and navigate to the folder where you wish to create a React project, and just paste in this command over here. Now, the moment you paste in the command, you will be asked for the project name. So I'm going to say email writer React. This is my project name because it's a React project, so I'm appending it with React. And then you can select the framework. So I'll select React since we are making use of React. I'll select JavaScript over here in case of variant. And then we will be given these set of commands to follow. So I'm going to copy this first command, paste it. And then I'm going to say npm install. So it will install all the dependencies. We'll wait until all the dependencies are installed. And then I'll just run npm run dev as per the instructions at the top. So here I'm going to say npm run dev. Okay, and this will make sure that the application runs. And you have to copy the URL, come over here and paste it. Okay, so you're going to see this web page over here, and this is a pre-built web page with a counter that you can increment on the fly. All right. So yeah, this is how you can set up the React project using Vite. So we are done with this. What we will also do is we will now install Visual Studio Code. So you can search for Visual Studio Code, and you can head over to this website, Visual Studio Code, and download it for Windows or Mac or whichever operating system you are on. So it's one of the most popular IDEs for web development, and you can see over here, this is how the IDE looks like. Okay, so you can go through this website over here. Okay, and we are going to make use of this. Now, installing Visual Studio Code should be fairly simple for you, just like any other software tool that you would install on your operating system. So I already have this installed, and I'm already a user of Visual Studio Code. So I use Visual Studio Code and IntelliJ heavily. So you would see a lot of recent projects over here that I might have opened or worked on. So you can open Visual Studio Code, you will be presented with a welcome screen, and then what you need to do is you need to head over to here at the top. Okay, and you can say open folder. And when you say open folder, just navigate to the folder where you have created the React app and just open it here. So here I've navigated to the folder, and here you can see this is a project that we had created, Email Writer React, and this is a Spring Boot project. So I'll select Email Writer React, I'll say select folder, and it will open up this folder over here. Okay, and what we can do is here I can head over to the terminal. So we don't actually need to make use of an external terminal over here. I can just shut the server by pressing Ctrl C or Command C or whatever. Come over here, and here in this folder, so once you open the terminal, it will open up in the root directory of the project. So you can say npm run dev. And since your application would require a local server running continuously as you work on the application so that you can test the changes live, you would open this, or you would start the server and you would come over here and you would have this application up and running. All right. So congratulations on moving to Visual Studio Code. So now to build the front end, it's time that we begin setting up the required dependencies. So I'm going to add a new instance of a terminal by clicking on this plus icon. Now, what are the dependencies that we would need? So we are going to make use of Material UI. So if you search for Material UI, you are going to see this website or land on this website. And Material UI is an open source React component library that implements Google's Material Design. So Material Design is a design philosophy by Google. And Material UI is an open source React component library that we can make use of. Now, the benefit of using this is you have to just run this command, npm install, you'll add these three things. Okay, and then you can make use of all these components that exist. So if you come over here, okay, you can see like under docs, Material UI, you will see under components, you will see autocomplete, you will see the button component. Okay, so here you can see this is combo box. You have button as well. Okay, where is the button? So here you can see button. Okay, this is the button. So you can use all of these styled components out of the box, right? So I'll come over here to the home page, and here you have okay. So here you have Material UI. Okay, one second. So I'll just go back. So this Material UI is the project. Okay, and here if you come, you can see this command over here. This you will also find in docs Material UI. You will see this under installation. You can see this. Okay, so just copy this, come over here, and just run this in the root of the project. The moment you run this, you will see all these dependencies being added onto your application. In your application, package.json. So this will get updated with these dependencies. We'll also need one more dependencies, and that is Axios. So Axios is a promise-based HTTP client for Node.js. Okay, so we'll be making use of this for making API calls, and you can install Axios using this npm install Axios. So we'll be making use of Axios instead of JavaScript's inbuilt fetch API. Okay, so we have added Axios as well. We have all the dependencies that we need now. I don't think we'll need anything else apart from these. So I'll collapse this. All right, now come over here, and we'll go to index.css. I'll get rid of all the default CSS, and from app.css, I'll get rid of all the default CSS, and in app.jsx, So you have this counter thing created. Okay, the CSS is removed, but this is coming in from src/app.jsx. So come over here, and within this, we will get rid of this entire thing until here, like this. Okay, and we will say p tag hello. And if you come over here, you can see hello appear, right? And we don't need the state as well. So this is pretty much optimized to our needs. We'll get rid of unnecessary stuff from the top. Okay. Now we are ready to start building our application, and that is what we are going to do. All right. So first thing, we are going to need a few state variables. So I'll begin setting up the state variables. I'll say const. Okay. We'll need a state variable called email content to keep a track of the email content. And I'll say set email content over here. This is a state variable. I'll say use state over here. We'll make use of use state hook. Now, this application that we are creating is a simple application that will take email content as the input, tone as the input, and it will give you the generated response as the output, right? Or generated reply as the output. So this is done. Okay, we have this email content. I'll also create tone over here, and I'll say set tone over here. Something like this over here. And this is also initialized to empty. I'll have generated reply. And here I'll say generated reply over here. This is also initialized to empty. And this will be loading over here. Okay. And I'll say set loading over here. Something like this. Okay. And this will be a boolean. So I'll set this to false. Okay. Then we have error. So we'll also have a state variable for managing the error state. Okay, so I'll say error. Oops, so caps was on error. And you can say set error over here. Something like this. This is done. Okay, now what we need to do is we will set up the UI over here. Okay, and we'll come over here. We don't need this hello. Okay, now out of here in the root tag, I'll make use of container, which is coming in from material UI. I'll say maxed width over here. Max width is MD. Oops. So MD, and I'll say SX is equal to, I'll say PY:4. Okay. So now, oops. So this is also a container. Now, if you want to understand what this container is, you can head over to the browser and just head over to material UI and just go under components. You'll see container over here. Okay, so just look out for container. It should be somewhere over here. Layout. So you can see under layout, you have container. Okay, so it's a fluid container bounded by max width prop value. And if you scroll down here, you can see this is how you create a container. Okay, you have, you can see like go through the entire thing. And here you can see the API documentation as well. So open this API documentation for container. And you should see over here, classes, components. So these are all the props that you can pass in. So max width. So it determines the max width of the container, and container will grow with the size of the screen. So you can set any of these values. You have SX over here, which is a system prop that allows defining system overrides, as well as additional CSS styles. So we have added this additional CSS style for padding, right? That is what we have done. Okay, so we'll be making use of these components, so it's best you keep this website handy. You can come over here, you can say typography over here. I can say, okay, typography, I'll actually end this. And here you can say variant. What is a variant? Variant can be H4. I can say component is H1. Oops, H1. And then I have a gutter bottom. So I'll say gutter bottom over here. Okay. And here I'll say email reply generator, something like this. Now, if you come to the app, you'll see email reply generator, right? And what did we use? We made use of typography. So if you come over here, this is typography. You can see it makes use of Roboto font by default, right? So you don't have to do all those configurations. And this is the component, right? You can see this is how you make use of typography variant H1 component H2. And you're seeing this over here. Okay. So you can also go to the API documentation and learn more about the props. So what are the props we used? We used variant. Now what is variant? If you scroll down, variant. So applies the theme typography style. So these are all the variants that you can make use of, right? You have component. Now what is component? The component used for the root node, either a string to use HTML element or a component. Okay, so we are making use of this, right? And here what we will do is we'll make use of box over here. Now I'll say box, something like this. Okay, let me import box. If you come over here, box is also a thing over here. So here you should see box. So in fact, you can search for box like so. So it's a layout. It's under layout. Okay, you can see it's a container for grouping items. Okay, you can see this is a box and this is how it's being rendered. You can see. So you can see border, like the custom CSS has been used over here. Right. So we are going to make use of this box. I'm going to say over here SX. This is like custom thing I'm adding. I'll say MX over here, colon to that of 3, something like this, right? And here I'll make use of text field like so. Okay, now inside a text field, I'm going to close this text field. Oops, close this. And here I'm going to say full width. Okay, full width, and I'll say multi-line. Okay, this is a multi-line text because this is a text field that we are making use to accept the email content. I'm going to say rows. How many rows you want to have? I'll add 6 rows, for example, because email content will be like it will have a lot of text. It can have a lot of text. Okay, variant I'll have outlined over here. I'll say label over here. What is the label? So label can be original email content, something like this. Then I'm going to say value over here. What is the value? Value is email content. I'll add or empty quotes over here. On change. Now what do you want to do on change? So on change, we can update the state over here. So we have this email content state, right? Which we are not using yet, but we have a setter for that. So I'll say E over here, and I'll say set email content over here. And here I'll say e.target.value, something like this. Oops, value. Okay. And here, then I'm going to say SX. And what is SX? I'm going to say margin bottom colon 2. Save this. Now, if you come over here to our application, you'll see this original email content being added like this. You can see. There was no CSS being used, and yet it's looking really presentable because we are making use of material UI components that are already styled, right? Now over here after box, not after box. So with inside the box itself, just after text field, we'll add a form control. Okay, so I'll say form control. Okay, and what I will do is I'll actually get this closed. So we'll add a sort of form over here, and I'll say input. What is the input? Input label. I'll say input label. I'll say tone. Now what is the tone we need? I'll say this is optional in the UI itself. Okay, and we'll have to say select. So this is a form control that we are adding. Select over here from material UI, and I'll get this select closed. And here I'm going to say select value as tone. Now if tone is not present, okay, I'll add a empty item over here. Okay, and oops, so basically I close this. So inside this I'll say label tone optional. Okay, so here you can say tone. I'll say tone, and here I'll say optional, something like this. Okay, and then here you'll say on change. On change you will see, so we have a state keeping track of tone. So you'll say on change set tone, and you'll pass in e.target.value, something like this. Okay, this is done. And now inside this input over here or select over here, you are going to say menu item, something like this. And here you'll say none first of all. So here the value will be empty. So this will be empty brace, empty inverted commas. For menu item, you will say professional over here. Professional, and here you will pass in professional, something like this. You'll copy this, and professional. What else menu items you want to have? So you can say over here casual. So I'll have casual, and here you can say casual, and then here you will have friendly, and this will be friendly as well, like so. Okay, I'll save this, and if you come over here, you'll see, okay, this is coming in this way. So the width is not good. I'll come over here, and here for form control, I'll say full width, and I'll say SX of margin bottom, MV of 2. Okay, this should work. Now if you come, you can see this is looking decent, right? So this is a form control that we have added. Now what we need to do is we need to add a button over here. So I'll come over here just outside this form control. I'll say button, like so, and over here I'll say we'll have to add a button, and this will be, the button will have a text of generate reply. Okay, but we'll be showing generate reply conditionally. So if loading state is true, then in that case show a circular progress. Okay, circular progress will self close it. Circular progress can be of size of 24. Okay, and if this is not true, then in that case you can generate reply like this. Okay, this is done. Oops, so this should be outside this. So I'll add it here, like so. Okay, this is done. Now this is taken care of. Now here for button, I'll add some props over here. So I'll say variant as contained, like so. Here I'll say on click. So on click over here, you'll have to add handle submit. Now this handle submit function does not exist, but we'll be adding that shortly. I'll say disabled. Is this disabled? So we'll disable this if email content is missing or the state is loading. So these are the two conditions. So I'll say if email content is negative or the state is loading over here. Okay, and I'll say full width over here. Okay, now handle submit does not exist, but what we will do is we'll scroll up here, and I'll say const handle submit over here is equal to async, and I'll say like so, and I'll say over here this is the function. Okay, so we'll work on this function later on, but for now this UI part is done. And if you come over here, you can see this button disabled. Now if you enter anything, this button will get enabled. Why? Because we have added that condition that if there is no email content, just disable this button. It makes sense, right? Rather than dealing with unnecessary validations. Okay, so this is taken care of. Now we can also display the error here at the bottom. So we have a state actually that keeps track of errors. So what I can do is here under box error over here, I'll say error, and so for error over here, we need to display the error. So I'll get this typography thing over here. We have made use of typography. I'll copy this typography. We'll come over here and I'll paste it over here. So I'll say here variant. So variant, I don't need variant over here. Okay, I'll get rid of component as well, gutter bottom as well. So I'll get rid of this. I'll say color. I need color over here. Now what is the color? Color is error. I'll say error. I'll say SX is equal to MP:2, something like this. Okay, and here instead of saying email reply generator, I'll just say error, something like this. Okay, this is the state that we have. Okay, this is done. Now after typography, what we would be doing is here I will like add the generated reply. So we need to like add the generated reply. So what I will do is I'll say here we can say if generated reply exists, then in that case I'll say and I'll add this over here. Okay, now here I'll have to end this with a semicolon. Now here what we need to do is okay, we don't need a semicolon there. Actually it's showing an error because we don't have anything inside these round braces. So here I can say box. First of all, I'll end this box, and for box I'm going to say sx is equal to here empty margin top of 3. Okay, for box I'm going to have a typography, okay, like so, and here variant of h6 and cutter bottom. Okay, and you will say generated reply, something like this. Okay, now here after typography you will have a text field like so. Okay, and inside text field, okay, text field we can actually self close, so I'll self close this text field, and here you're going to say full width, you're going to say multi-line, you're going to say rows, how many rows you want to display. I'll say 6 for now, and variant is equal to outlined. Okay, these are all the props that we are passing in. Value, what is the value you want to display? So if generated reply exists, you pass in generated reply, or you pass in an empty string. Okay, so this is done, and then you have input props. You'll say read only is true. I'll say read only, oops, true, something like this. Okay, this is done, and we are done with this. Okay, so we are displaying this. Now what you can do is you can add a button here. Okay, let's add a button. So button will be for copying, copying the text generated. So I have this button, and here you can say copy to clipboard. Okay, and here you can say variant is outlined, and you will say sx is equal to margin top colon 2, like so, and here you will say on click. So what should happen on click over here? You'll have a empty function coming in, and you'll say navigator dot clipboard dot write text, and I'll just pass in the generated reply. So this is how you copy text to a clipboard. Okay, and this is done, and here at the bottom here you'll say copy to clipboard. This is done, right? Box is closing, container, and I'll save this. Now if you come over here, okay, you have this UI. You won't see other stuff over here like error and generated reply because those does not exist. Okay, but now since we have the UI, what we can do is we can work on this handle submit function. So if you scroll up at the top, we have added handle submit. Now this is going to do a API request. So first of all, I'm going to set the loading over here, loading state to true, because of course API request is in progress. So loading state is true. Set error. If there are any sort of previous errors, I'll just clear them off. Okay, because we need to keep track of fresh errors. I'll just add a try catch block over here. Okay, error is over here, and I'll say set error. So if error is generated, I'm making use of setter for error, and I'm saying failed to generate email reply. Okay, please try again. Something like this. So I'm having a user-friendly error message, and I'm like printing console.error over here onto the console. I'm going to say error over here, something like this. Okay, so this is taken care of, the error part. Okay, I'll have finally. Why finally? Because I need to set loading for false. So irrespective of whether the API call was successful or it generated errors, it was not successful, we'll have finally block executed, setting the loading to false. Now I'm going to say const response, and let's make the API call. So I'm going to say await dot, okay, await Axios. So I'm going to import Axios over here, dot post. Now it's a post request, of course, to the endpoint. Now what is the endpoint? this is our endpoint, right? So I'll copy this, come over here, paste it. Okay, this is the endpoint, and I'll say comma, and I'll add a open and curly brace, and here I'll say email content. Okay, and then I'll say comma, I'll say tone over here. So I'm passing in the email content and the tone as a part of the request body. Okay, and then what we will do is we'll close this. We'll add a semicolon, and I'll say set generated reply. So I need to update the update the state over here, generated reply. So I'm calling set generated reply. What should I set it to? I'll say type of over here. Okay, if type of response dot data is equal to string. Okay, if the type of response dot data is string, then in that case, assign response dot data to set generated reply. Otherwise, what you can do is you can basically say, JSON dot, so we'll say JSON dot stringify. Okay, and I'll say response dot data. So we are actually returning string only from the backend, but I'm just adding an additional check to see if the response dot data is string. If it is a string, then I'm assigning the response dot data. Otherwise, I'm converting it to a string and returning. So that's one sort of step that I've added. Okay. Now, if you come over here, let us test the application. Okay. If I say hello, how are you? Okay. Now, of course, this is not going to work because we don't have the course set. So if you don't know what course is, if you send this generator reply, you'll get this error saying has been blocked by course policy. So basically, the request to the backend to this URL has been blocked from this URL. Why? Because you are doing a cross origin request from localhost 5173 to localhost 8080. So whenever you try to do an API request from one domain to another, modern browsers will usually be blocking it unless you are setting the course policy in your backend and explicitly mentioning that you want to allow the API request coming in from this front end. Okay. So for that, what we need to do is we need to head over to the backend and we need to do some sort of little configuration that will enable the course request. So I'll come over here to our backend, and here in the controller, I will say cross origin. So I'm enabling cross origin request, and I'm going to say origins. Okay, which origins I want to allow it from? All. Okay, and I'll simply run this. Okay, simply run this so that we have these configurations applied. So for this entire controller, we are accepting requests from any origin. Come over here and try to generate a reply again. So I'll clear this, generate the reply. So you could also see the error state working. Did you see the error state working? Right? So we saw the error in red, and here you can see generated replies. Hi, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How about you? So this is coming in from AI, right? And here at the bottom, you have a button to copy this response to the clipboard as well. So if you say this, it will be copied to clipboard and you can see it's copied, right? So it's working fine. Okay, you can generate the response based on professional, or I hope this email finds you well. Thank you for your email. How may I assist you today? Okay, so it's professional. You can make it friendly. Hi, I hope you're doing well. How can I help you today? So you can basically make use of this application. Now we have a front end, right? And it's working fine. Now, one thing I would like to highlight here, we added cross origin star. So we are accepting requests from all the origins, because today we have a React app. Tomorrow we could add a Chrome extension or something like that. We can have requests coming in from different places, right? So I've enabled it for all the origins. Okay. You can choose not to do or specify the host as well, right? In the place of star. So yeah, this application is working fine, and you can also see the state and all is working fine as well, right? So I hope you have been able to follow along, and I hope this has been useful. Hey there. So now it's time that we begin thinking about the Chrome extension and we are going to understand how we can build a Chrome extension and how we can consume the APIs that we have built with Spring Boot. So the best part about APIs is they can be consumed from anywhere, whether it's a front-end application, whether it's a Chrome extension, or whether it's a mobile app. So you can create any sort of application, even desktop applications. So you can create any sort of applications and consume APIs that are hosted on the internet. All right. So here on Google, I have incognito mode open, and here on Google, just search for how to create extension in Google Chrome. Now you will see tons of articles over here, and I'm going to take a look at the official ones from Chrome and Google. Okay. So here there are two links. Okay. This is like extensions getting started. Okay. And I'll open this in a new tab, and I have this another link. Create and publish Chrome apps and extensions. Okay, so I'll open this. All right. Now over here, if you see, you can see like this is how you can build an app or an extension for Google Chrome. All right. So here they've given some steps, and you have the link to get started tutorial with Chrome extensions building. All right. And if you click on this link, this get started tutorial, you will actually land on this page itself. Okay, developer.chrome.com, which is the first link over here. All right. So here you will find an overview of how you can create, like first step is create a folder where you will have all the extension files. You will create a manifest. Then you will save the file as manifest.json. You'll add a logo. You'll test it. So it's a very high level step. Okay. You can follow this if you're familiar with how you can create extensions, but we are going to go a little bit deep and understand nitty-gritties of extensions, right? Now over here, you will see this link. Okay, this is from Chrome for developers. And here you will see everything in detail. Okay, so build your first extension. Now, one thing I forgot to talk about is what is an extension first of all. All right. Now here in browser, basically you have extensions that you can add. Now, every browser supports extension. For example, Firefox and Chrome are two most popular browsers out there, and they both supports extension, which help you enhance the ability of the browsers. So there are some inbuilt features that browser has, and if you want to enhance or extend those abilities or features, or you want to add some extra features into your browser, you can make use of extensions. So extensions are like plugin that you have to install onto your browser, and you can make use of it. That is what extensions are, just in case if you are not aware. Okay, so if you come over here, you have this get started. Okay, now you can see over here what are extensions. So Chrome extensions enhance the browsing experience by customizing user interface, observing browser event, and modifying the web. Okay, they help you add additional features. How are they built? You can build using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And what can they do? They can do a lot of things. Okay, you can read more about the guide. Now, there are some terminologies that are mentioned over here. Okay, and like I'll talk about a few terminologies like manifest. Now, what is a manifest file? So it's a file, and this is the only required file. So rest all the files are optional. But if you're building a Chrome extensions, this is the only required file that must have the specific name as manifest.json. So when you load the extension into Google Chrome is going to look for a file with this name, and it is going to load the extension. And this is a file that has all the configuration for that particular extension. Okay. Now, one more thing I would want to mention that I'm talking about Chrome extension here. If you want to build an extension for Firefox, you can refer to the appropriate documentation. Okay. Because see, I'm teaching you how to build an extension using Chrome. Okay. And I'm taking you through each and every step. Like I'm going through the documentation. I'm showing you how you can even read the docs. So this knowledge is very essential, because tomorrow if some other browser comes into market, you should be aware of how you can crack, like how you can build an extension for the same browser as well. Okay, how you can crack the development for the same. So that is really important. And that's what software engineering is. You need to figure things out, right? So you can see over here, manifest. So this is an important file when it comes to Chrome extension building. It also has to be located in the extension root directory. And the manifest records important metadata, like I said, configuration. Okay, it defines resources, permissions, everything around the extension. It also has the extension name. So all of this is defined in manifest. All right. Service worker. So it says it's a worker that runs in the background and handles browser events like removing a bookmark and all. Content script. So this is like JavaScript. Okay, it runs in the context of web page. We have toolbar action, side panel, and declarative net request. So we are not going to use this, but we are going to mainly use manifest, and we are going to use a few scripts to build our extension. Okay, and you can publish it to Chrome Web Store as well, so that people can search and download your extension. That is something you can do. Okay, now if you scroll down, you have very good tutorials that have been provided by Chrome team over here. Okay, so a huge applaud for them. They've made extension building so easy. So here you can see you can build your first extension by following this tutorial. Okay, and you can see there are quite a few tutorials over here. You can debug your extension, handle service work, create a tab manager, inject scripts into the active tab, run scripts on every page. So all of this can be done. Okay, and here there are a few tabs at the top that can help you also explore the extension building. You can also take a look at the AI tab over here, and here there is a get inspired tab. You can go over here and you can get inspired with what World has built. How Spotify is using picture-in-picture API to build a Spotify mini player. Scroll driven animation case studies. So all of these are case studies, okay, from people across the globe. All right, now if you come over here, what we are going to do is we are going to start this first tutorial, our first extension. Okay, and this is a very simple extension, and as per the convention, whenever you're learning something new, you first make hello world in that particular language or technology. So here also we'll be making hello world extension. We'll be following this step-by-step guide. Okay, it's not a rocket science. We'll follow it step by step, and we'll basically simulate this onto our local machine. Okay, now the IDE that I'll be making use of is like Visual Studio Code. All right, because this is the best IDE when it comes to web development. It's free and open source, so be sure to have Visual Studio Code installed onto your system, and we'll go through it. So okay, so what does this extension do? It will help us create a hello world example and load the extension locally, right? So this is what the extension look like. It has this logo and it shows this pop-up over here, right? Hello extensions. Okay, now here it's guiding us like what we need to do. So first we need to create a new directory for all our extension files. So as directed, I'll head over to my Explorer, and here in this particular folder on my local machine, I'm creating all the files related to this project. So I have this email writer SB, which is a Spring Boot project, which is the backend API. Then I have the React application folder, and this folder has the React app. I'll create one more folder over here, which will have the hello world extension. So I'll say hello world. Okay, and I'll say ext, something like this. Okay, so I've added this, and I'll keep this folder over here. Now what you can do is you can actually open this folder. I'll just copy this. Okay, you can actually open this folder in Visual Studio Code. So I'll just say open folder over here, and I'll just navigate to this folder here, something like this, and I'll just say select folder. So this is just going to open this folder, and I'll just close this because we are going to create all the files over here. All right, now if you come over here, okay, it's telling us if you prefer, you can download the full source code from GitHub. So here they have a GitHub URL as well, which is very generous of them. And here you can see tutorial.hello world. They have these 4 files that we are going to create. One is an HTML file, hello extensions.png, which is likely the logo of the extension, manifest.json, which I already spoke about, and we have popup.js, which is a JavaScript file. Manifest.json is holding all the configuration related to the extension, and hello.html is loading the JavaScript. All right, so I'll come over here. I'll just close this case study tab. Okay, I'll close all the unwanted tabs. Come over here and we'll see. Okay, we'll follow this tutorial. So create a new file called manifest.json, and like we know, this JSON file describes the capabilities and configuration, right? So it is helping us define all the configuration, like what sort of version this extension is having. So take a look at this file. This is a sample file over here that we are going to create. So it has a name, you can see. It has a description, which is the description of the extension, the version, the manifest version, action. So this is so you can see over here. Okay, for example, most manifests contain action key, which declares the image Chrome should use as an extension action icon. So you can see this is the default icon, hello extensions.png. So this icon that you see over here, hi, that is what it's being shown over here, default icon, right? And the HTML page to show in the pop-up when the extensions icon is clicked. So if the user clicks on this extension, what should happen? So that is being defined by this HTML. Okay. So that's what action is doing over here, right? So this is what we are going to do. So I'll copy this file name. Okay. Be sure not to have any sort of spelling mistake over here. And that's the sole reason why I'm copying it. I'll just create this JSON in the root of the extension directory. I'll copy this and I'll paste it over here. Okay. So this manifest.json is created. All right. Now scroll down. Okay, they are also giving us the icon. So I'll just open this icon.png and I'll save it over here. So what I will do is I'll copy this image, copy image. I'll come over here. Let me paste it. Are you sure you want to paste? Yes, of course. So you can see the image is over here now, image.png. Okay. And it's called hello extensions.png, right? So I'll close this actually. And we need to name the image as hello extensions.png. Okay. So be sure to change its name to match what's there in the default icon. So if you're mentioning hello extensions.png, be sure to change the name of the image to hello extensions.png. So I'll right click, I'll say rename, and I'll update the image name over here, something like this. Okay. So this is done. All right. Now what we need to do is for the pop-up, we need to create an HTML file. So I'll copy this. We need to say hello.html and hello.html because we have mentioned the HTML file name as hello.html over here. If you're changing this name, be sure to create a file with that name. Okay. So I'll say hello.html, something like this. Okay. And then come over here, scroll down. Okay. And we are going to, the extension now displays a pop-up when the extensions action icon bar is clicked, and you can test it in Chrome by loading it locally. All right. So now is the time. We have a very simple extension, which is just loading this pop-up, right? Which is loading this UI hello extensions. So we need to now test it, and to test it, we need to load this extension into our browser. Now, what does loading mean? Now, loading is a process wherein we are actually telling Chrome to load this extension or load all the files of this extension and show us the output so that we can test it. Okay. So you can see over here, they've also given steps as to how you can load the extension. All right. So to load an unpacked extension in developer mode, go to extension page by entering this into your browser. Okay. So you can enter this into your browser. So I'll copy this and you can enter over here. But one thing, I'm in incognito mode. In incognito, it won't load extensions. Okay. So to load this, you need to go to actual browser mode and you can just paste this URL over here. So you'll see this open up. Okay. Now, if you're not interested in pasting this, you can also go from here. You can click on options. Okay. Scroll down and you should see extensions over here, and you have this option to manage extensions. So if you click on that, you will come over here, the same page. So you can do that way as well, or you can directly paste the URL. Okay. Whichever way you prefer. So go over here. Now what you need to do is alternatively, you can click on the extension puzzle menu. Okay. So this is they are saying what I just showed you. Okay. And you need to enable the developer mode. So you need to enable the developer mode before you load the extension, and then you need to click on load unpacked button and select the extension directory. Okay. So come over here. I'll just show you what needs to be done. Now on the right hand side here in Google Chrome, you will see developer mode. What this means is you can enable developer mode over here, and you are telling Google Chrome that give me options so that I can use all the features that are there in Google Chrome for building extensions. So if you say enable developer mode, you will see this option pane appear, and here you have an option to like load unpacked extension, pack extension, and update. So I'll say load unpacked. Okay. Now when you say load unpacked, it will show a explorer, and you need to navigate to the directory where you have created all the files for extension. Okay. For example, this is the directory where we have created all the files for extension. So we need to navigate over there, and we need to select that directory, and we need to say okay. So let me show that to you. So I just navigated to the folder where my project is created and all the file related to this project is. Now in this folder, there is a folder that I've created hello world extension ext. So I'll select this, and the moment you select this, you will see extension loaded at the bottom left. And here you will see hello extensions 1.0 base level extension. Now, where is this coming in from? So if you come over here, Hello extensions is the name, and base level extensions is the description that you have given to it. Okay. You can see the ID and version also being shown over here. So version is coming in over here. It's being picked up from here. Okay. So if you're launching extension onto Chrome App Store or Chrome Web Store, you can basically update the version for every new release over here. Okay. You have the manifest version as well. All right. Now, this is done. Okay. The extension is loaded. Now, what you can do over here is if you come here, let us take a look at the guide. You have to pin the extension. Okay. What does this mean? So, if you come here, you can see there is no extension icon that is being shown over here. So for the extension icon to be shown over here, you need to pin it so that you can see it all the time. So I'll click on this icon, which is the extensions icon, and you can come over here. You can see your extension, right? And you can see these extensions do need to see and change information on this side because we have not taken any permission. So that is why it's showing you this, right? You can pin it. Now you can see the icon. This is the icon that we have actually added over here. This is the icon, right? And you're seeing that icon appear over here. Okay. When you said pin, you're seeing this icon appear over here now, right? And when you click on this, you can see hello extensions. And where is this coming from, right? This is coming in from the HTML file that is being loaded. H1 extensions, right? You can see this. Okay. How great is this? You can see hello extensions, right? So you can see now how this worked, and this is the output that we are getting as well. All right. Now what we would do is we would make a small change and we'll see how we can refresh the change. So here you can see it's asking us to update the copy. So I'll just copy this hello extensions of the world. I'll just paste it over here. Hello extensions of the world. I saved it and come over here and let us see over here. You can see this did not require us to reload the extension. Okay, what does this mean is reloading is a process wherein you click on this icon. You can see this reload icon here, this reload icon. Okay, so you can reload if you have made some change onto your extension, you should reload. And there are kinds of changes that require reload. So if you come over here, okay, so here you can see they've demonstrated as to how you can reload the extension. And you can see if you change the manifest, you need to reload the extension. If you change the service worker, content script, pop-up. So pop-up options page and HTML pages do not require reload like we just saw. We made a change to HTML and we did not require reload. But changes like manifest, service worker, all of these and content script require reload. Okay, so it's important that you understand how you can do reloads. Okay, let's talk about console logs and errors over here. Okay, so we will add a script over here. We'll say script.src. Okay, let us add this. We'll add this link and then we'll create a popup.js and we'll add this file. Okay, so I'll say popup.js and we'll add this. This is a popup over here. Okay, now to see this message in the console, open the popup, right click the popup and say inspect, and then you'll see this in the DevTools. Okay, so we'll come over here in the browser, we'll open this, we'll say right click, inspect. And you can see here, you'll see console and you can see this is a pop-up. I'll just zoom in. Can you see this? This is a pop-up, right? So this is how it would work. And I hope this has given you some good clarity as to how things are working. Okay. Now, if you here, they've purposely broken the code. Okay. So you can copy this. Okay. And let me break the code. I'll paste this. And if you save this, okay, if you save this and if you say reload, okay, it will reload and you can see there is an error that it has got, and you can see this error tab over here that has appeared. So you can click on errors and you will see this error over here. So you can debug things this way, right? So I hope these things are useful, and I hope this tutorial is actually helpful, or pretty straightforward and to the point. Okay, and yeah, they have also given you the structure of an extension project. So whenever you create a extension project, you need to have manifest.json in the root. Then this is how you can structure things. You can have pop-up related files in the pop-up folder, script related files in the script folder, images in the image folder. You have background.js which is a worker, service worker, and then you have a manifest.json, which is a manifest file, right? So this is a tentative structure that is being recommended by Chrome team for an extension project. Okay. So I hope this is useful, and I hope you have been able to follow along this simple tutorial of how you can build extensions with Google Chrome. Now it's time that we begin creating the extension which will work with our backend API. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder in this particular project. So here I'm in this folder and I'm going to create a new folder over here. I'm going to say email writer extension, something like this. Okay, you can call the folder whatever you want to, but this is a folder that is going to have all the extension related files. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to close whatever is open in Visual Studio Code. We'll be making use of Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to say open folder, and here I'm going to navigate to the folder which I just created. So here in this folder I just created email writer ext. I'm going to select this and we'll open this folder over here. I'm going to knock off this welcome screen or welcome tab over here. Okay, we don't need that. So here under this folder, now I'm going to create all the files that I'm going to need for this extension. So first I'm going to have manifest. Okay, manifest.json over here. Okay, I'm going to have let's say content.js. Now what is content.js? Content.js is the JavaScript file that is going to help us inject the button onto Gmail Compose screen and even Gmail's user interface, and it is going to help us do the API call and everything else we need to do for this particular extension to function. We're going to need some sort of CSS as well. So I'm going to say content, okay, content.css. So this is our CSS file that is going to have some sort of styling for our project, okay, for our extension. Now let us begin defining the manifest.json. Now manifest.json is the main configuration file that is needed for every extension that exists. So what we are going to do is we are going to define all the configuration that we need for our extension over here, like extension name, version, description, even permissions, and we are going to have all of that defined so that when we load this extension into Google Chrome knows what this extension needs. So let us begin defining our manifest.json file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a pair of curly braces. I'm going to say manifest underscore version colon. Okay, I'll just close this and I'll say colon, and over here I'll say 3. Okay, so this will be 3. Okay, and in fact what you can do is you can come over here and you can actually copy paste a boilerplate code over here. So you can simply copy this rather than just typing in everything. Okay, you can simply copy this, copy all of this, and this is a starting point, and you can change the values. So I'll say email writer assistant. So you can actually name your application whatever, or name your extension whatever you wish to, and over here you can add the description. I'll say AI powered email reply generator, something like this. Okay, so this is something that I'm saying. Extension version is 1.0. I have manifest version as 3, and action is something that so instead of default pop-up, I'll say default title over here. Okay, so default title is something that I'll add, and here we'll add a title to the extension. I'll say email writer assistant, something like this, and I'll get rid of this one. We don't need the second one. So icon you can add, but I'm not bothering to add that right now. Okay, you know how you can add the icon. If you want to add, you can add it later on. Okay, but I'm just going to focus on the functionality. So we have this setup now. We are going to add a few more tags over here. Okay, now if you're not clear of what tag I'm adding or what key value pair I'm adding, then what you can do is you can come over here onto the documentation. I'll give you a reference guide. So you can click over here on this homepage, Chrome for Developers, and you will come on this page. Okay, so developer.chrome.com. Now over here, just head over to this navigation bar. Okay, and find reference over here. So where is reference? Okay, so reference I don't see over here. Okay, so what we will do is we'll scroll down. Okay, and we'll go to docs, see all the documentation, and inside here we are not seeing yet. Okay, so 1 second. So go back over here. We'll go to the tutorial again. Okay, so here scroll up. We'll say okay, so this is not the right place to be in my opinion. Go to extensions over here. Okay, I got it. So I clicked on extensions from the docs. Okay, now here you'll go to reference and you'll select manifest over here. Okay, so select manifest, and manifest is basically all about this manifest file. Okay, so you can see it's talking what manifest file is, some examples of manifest over here. Okay, you can see it is used, this thing is used to inject a content script, register a content script, and so on. Okay, if you scroll down, you will see the definition of all the keys that are required by extension platform. So you can see description. So what does this do? Icon, what does this do? Action, what does this do? All of this, you can add an author as well. Okay, so this is the documentation or the master doc that you can think of. Okay, and you can refer to this if there is something that you wish to use or enhance in this application. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to I'm going to add some things over here. Okay, so here just under manifest version, I'm going to add permissions, something like this. Okay, and here I'm going to come in, I'm going to add a comma, and I'm going to say I need a couple of permissions over here. So permissions, if you come, let's see. Okay, is there permissions being used anywhere? Okay, this, you can see this is how the permissions is being used. So I'll just, you can even copy this from here if you want to use something. I'll copy this and you'll see an error if you don't add a comma in the end. Okay, now I need couple of permissions. One is active tab, you can see active tab, and I need storage. Okay, so these are the two permissions I need. And if you want to know what the meaning of this permission is, so you can scroll down over here. Okay, and you can see you can search for permission, something like this. Okay, it won't come over here. Let me search for this. Okay, permissions, you can see over here. See, so you can see this is the permission that extension has. Okay, it's simple, and there are a couple of things that I've added as permissions, and as you can see, active tab. Now what does active tab mean? Active tab allows the extension to access the currently active tab when the user clicks on the extension icon. So whatever is active right now in the browser, the extension will have the permission to access it. All right. What is storage? Storage lets the extension store and retrieve data like saving settings or any sort of user preferences that your extension might need. All right. So that is what it is. We also need host permissions. So if you scroll up over here, okay, if you scroll up, let us see, register a content script, pop up with permissions. So you can see this host permission over here. This is an array. So I'll just copy this again. I'll add that as well. Now what is host permissions? Okay, so I need to add tab over here so that it indents. All right. So with the help of host permission, what you can do is you can tell Google Chrome that these are the specific websites that the extension is allowed to interact with. Now, which are the websites that we want extension to allow interacting with? Okay, first is our backend. Okay, so I'm going to like get rid of this entire thing over here. I'm going to say http://localhost:8080 over here. Okay, and I'll say /*. So all the APIs I should be able to access. And since this is an array, I'll add one more value over here. What is the another value? I want my extension to interact with mail.google.com because this is going to work on Gmail. Okay, so this URL is something that I should be able to access with. Okay, so two things. One is our local server, and this is useful during development. If you host your backend server elsewhere, be sure to add that URL over here. Second thing is we are allowing our extension to work on Gmail pages. All right. So this is done. The next thing we need is we need to specify we need to specify things about content scripts. Okay, so I'll come over here, and here you can see inject a content script. Okay, now this is okay. Where is the content script tag here? Here there is no content script tag as I can see. Register a content script. Okay, this is a content script tag that we should be making use of. Okay. And this allows us to register a content script. Now, what is a content script in our application. So it's content.js, and we also have one more script which is content.css. So we need to register both of them, and we need to tell the extension that hey, or we need to tell the Google Chrome browser that hey, we want these two scripts to be working on these pages. Okay, how are we going to specify? I'll show you that. So I'll select this entire array over here. Copy this. I'll come over here. Just under this, I'll add this, and here something like this over here. I'll add a comma in the end. Okay, so that the error goes away. Now over here, you'll see content scripts is the tag. Okay, first thing I'm saying is JS. I'm also specifying matches. Now what does matches do? First of all, I'll start with matches. Matches specifies which web pages the script should run on. All right. Now where do we want our scripts to run? We want our scripts to run on Gmail, right? So I'll copy this Gmail URL and I'll add it over here, something like this. So we want the scripts that we are specifying to run on Gmail, right? JS tag will mention the JavaScript file that will run on the matched pages. So which is our file, JavaScript file? It's content.js. So I'll just remove this content script.js. Okay, it's content.js over here. So this is something we have specified. I can just take this on a single line over here so that it looks a bit tidy. Okay, I have matches also that can be taken onto a single line. Okay, so that it does not look too long. This is done. All right, what I would do is I would also add a couple of more scripts. I'll say CSS. We'll make use of this similar format over here. And here I'll add an array like we have. I'll say content.css. So this is going to run the CSS files that will style the pages when the script runs. Okay, you can add more CSS files if you have, like specifying comma over here. Okay, but we have only one. After CSS, I'll say run underscore at, and I'll add a colon over here, and run underscore at, I'll say document underscore end. Now what does this do? So this is actually ensuring the script runs after the web page is fully loaded. We are saying run at document end. Okay. Now if you want to learn more and understand or explore what all values you can add, what we will do is we'll copy this content scripts. We'll come over here. We'll say Control F and search for content scripts. So you will see this on the left hand pane, content scripts. I'll select this. Okay. So you'll be taken to this particular page, and here you have everything about content scripts. So you can see a content scripts key specifies a statically loaded JavaScript or CSS file to be used on every time the page is opened or match a certain URL pattern. Okay. So here you can see this is how you can specify. This is exactly how we have specified, but this thing has more properties over here mentioned. Okay. So you can see you can specify CSS and JS in the form of array over here. All right. You can specify the paths, matched URL. So matched property is required only if you want to basically run or load the scripts when the URL is matched. Okay. You can also make use of exclude matches, include globs, exclude globs, and so on. Right. If you scroll down, you'll see the format in which these are supposed to be used. Okay. Now you can see over here, https star.example.com/*. So it will match this. Even the subdomains it will match, because you are mentioning star over here in case of subdomains, right? But it won't match this. You can see my.example.com over here. You can see it is not matching this. It is not even matching this. It is not even matching this. Okay. Now if you scroll down, you have another version of this. You can see how it's matching and not matching. So the documentation is very comprehensive. You can see over here. Okay. So this is what we are doing, and you can also specify runtime and execution environment. So by default, content scripts are injected when the document and all the resources are finished loading. So this is the default behavior. Okay. But you can specify run at, you can specify document start, document end, document idle. Okay. Document start is when the document is still loading. Document end is the page resources are still loading. Okay. And the DOM basically is loaded. Okay. By this time, document end. And DOM and resources have finished loading. This is the default. Okay. So you can change based on what you wish to do. Okay. So we have specified this. All right. And what we need to do is we will specify one more tag over here. Okay. So we'll come back to our original example over here. Okay. And here, if you go, okay, we don't have we don't have an example that is making use of web accessible resources. Now, this property or this key, web accessible resources, defines files within the extension that can be accessed by web pages or other extensions. Okay, so that is what you can specify. So if you go to web accessible, so this is the complete page of this particular key over here. Okay, so this is how you can make use of, right? So you can see over here, there are two sub keys within this main key. So you can see this is the first one, resources. So it's an array of string, okay, and it is a basically path that is given resource from the extension's root directory. Okay, so you are giving access to all of this. So test1.png, test2.png. Okay, and then you have matches as well. So matches simply specifies the condition or a pattern as to which sites can access this set of resources. So resources will specify the resources and matches will tell which sites can access these resources. Okay, so what I will do is I'll copy this entire thing. Okay, so that we can avoid typos over here. I'll come over here, I'll paste this, and instead of having like couple of objects over here, so this is an array, there are two objects. This is the first one, this is the second one. I'll get rid of one object, we don't need this over here. Okay, and what you can do is you can specify resources over here by adding, icons. Okay, so you can say something like this. You can say icons dot star over here. Okay, and over here you can add mail.google.com, something like that. So here you can have the path matching. So this entire thing over here you can add over here. Okay, so if you have an icons directory, you can basically enable the access of icons to this particular website. So tomorrow if you are adding icon, you will be adding button, right? Generate an AI reply. So you can create an icons directory and you can expose these icons to this particular site basically, right? And then what we have done is we have actions key over here, which is defining the default title that appears when you hover over the extension icon in the browser toolbar. So that is what this is defining, like default title. All right. So this is our manifest.json, and we are done defining manifest file. Now what we can do is we can actually test this much of code, and here in content.js, okay, we'll add a console.log statement over here. We'll say email writer extension. So I'll say content script loaded over here. Okay, so what we will do is we will head over to Google Chrome. Okay, and we'll try loading this extension, and if we see this being printed onto the console, it means like everything is working fine and these scripts are being loaded in the right way. Okay, so here you can come over here. All right, and so here you can come over here and you can say load unpacked, and we'll head over to the directory like email writer ext. Okay, so this is our extension. I'll say select folder, and you can see the extension is loaded now. You can come over here, you'll see this email writer assistant. I'll just pin this. Okay, and here if you say let me inspect, we'll go to inspect. Okay, and we'll go to console. So actually I'm not seeing console log here because this is an extensions page, right? So extension won't load on this page. Why? Because if you remember here in manifest.json we have mentioned that it should only load the content.js when the URL matches this, right? So we need to head over to this URL, mail.google.com. So here I have a dummy email open. Okay, this is a dummy email. I can right click and I can say inspect over here. Okay, so go to inspect, and here under console, if you refresh, okay, you will see email writer extension content script loaded. So this is actually loading on Gmail only and not on any other tab. So if you go to any other page, it won't load because of this thing over here, right? This thing. So it validates that our extension is loading in the correct way, and now we can begin writing the code and we can develop this extension further. Now to begin developing the extension, the first thing we would need is something called as a mutation observer. Okay, so what is a mutation observer? So if you come over here to Google, search for mutation observer this way, and you'll see this link from developer.mozilla.org. So come over here, okay, and you can see over here, mutation observer is an interface that provides the ability to watch for changes being made to the DOM tree. Okay, so understand this Gmail thing over here that you are seeing, okay, it's a DOM that is being loaded into the browser. Now, when the user clicks on the compose button, I should be able to see this button over here, which is specific to my application, my extension, and it should be the generate email reply using, or create an email using, using AI. Or if a user clicks on reply, and if this pop-up comes in, this compose, then basically you should have this generate email reply button over here, right? So what I want to do is I want to dynamically inject the button over here based on the DOM changes. And for this, I need to make use of mutation observer, right? So I need to first watch for the changes that are being made to the DOM tree. And then basically I need to do whatever I want to do. Like for example, inject the button, right? So if you scroll down over here, there is a nice example as well as to how you can, make use of it. So here you can mention the target node. Okay, this is a node that will be observed for mutations. Okay, and then you specify some sort of configuration over here. You mention like child list is equal to child list is equal to true, subtree is equal to true, attributes also true. Okay, now whatever things you want to observe, you specify true for them. So for example, I need to observe child list, subtree, attributes. So under this root, everything is being observed, and then you specify the callback function that you want to execute when mutations are observed. So if there is any change in the DOM, then based on your configuration, the callback function is essentially executed. So you can see this is a callback that is being defined, and then you are making use of mutation observer, and you are basically creating an observer instance, okay, that is linked to the callback function, and then you are starting observing the changes. You can see over here, okay, and you can even disconnect this when you want to stop observing. Okay, so this is an example that is there. Okay, so we are going to need two mutation observers. One mutation observer will watch the changes in the DOM to detect when the compose window is added. Okay, so whenever the compose window is added, we need to know that event, right? So that we can inject our button. And the second mutation observer will watch for the URL changes. Okay, now if there is any sort of URL changes that are happening, like compose. So if you click over here, you will see the URL changes over here. URL change to compose equal to new, right? So this is a URL change as well. So if these kind of URL changes happens, right? And if there are situations where Gmail uses dynamic navigation without full page reloads, then you need to watch for these events, because page reload did not happen over here when I clicked on compose, right? Page reload did not happen. The URL got updated, but page reload did not happen. So all these things we need to observe for, and we need to inject the buttons based on our application. So that is what we are going to do. So what we will do is we will begin defining our own mutation observer, and I'm here in Visual Studio Code. Okay, so I'm going to say const, I'm going to say observer over here. I'm going to say is equal to new mutation observer. You can see this mutation observer. I'm going to make use of this. Okay, and I'm going to accept mutations over here, something like this. And I'm going to say, I'm going to have this kind of a syntax, and I'm going to define the code inside these two pair of curly braces. Okay, so what we are doing is we are creating a new instance of mutation observer over here, which is like we just saw, it's a browser API that watches for changes in the DOM. And if you hover on it, it is going to give you some sort of documentation as well over here. It's giving me, you can see, and it accepts a callback over here. You can see it takes a callback function which receives the list of mutations. So we are accepting the list of mutations. Now what are mutations? Mutations are nothing but the list of changes that have occurred in the browser. Okay, now we have the list of changes that have occurred in the browser. So what are we going to do? Okay, we are going to loop through each mutation in the mutation array, and basically we are going to do the processing further. So here I'm going to end this with a semicolon first, and I'm going to say for, okay, I'm going to create a for loop. Okay, not a for, I'll say for each, Okay, so it says, okay, not this one. So I'll just type in for const mutations. So I'll say mutation of mutations. Okay. And here I'm going to define things inside this. So I'm iterating through this mutations that we have using this particular mutation, and a single mutation, like the single mutation, will represent a change in the DOM. Okay, because this is an array and this is representing a change in the DOM because we are looping in through. Right now, what we need to do is we need to say const over here. I'll say added nodes over here. Sorry, added nodes is equal to array dot from, and I'm going to say here mutation dot added nodes over here. Okay, now understand this, for every mutation you will have a added node property. Okay, added nodes property. Okay, this is added nodes property that I'm accessing over here. So I have this property for every mutation. Okay, and what does added nodes property have? Added nodes property of each mutation array contains the nodes that were added to the DOM. Okay, so what we are doing is we are taking this added nodes and we are converting this into an array. Now what we need to do is we have the list of we have the list of nodes basically that were added to the DOM in this particular array. And what we can do is we can check if any of the added nodes match a certain selector that indicates the Gmail Compose window. All right. Now, how is Gmail Compose window identified? So if you come over here, okay, if you say reply over here, okay, and if you come over here to the bottom toolbar, this bottom toolbar has appeared, or this window has appeared, right? So I'll consider this bottom toolbar. If you say inspect over here, you will see the HTML, okay, and you can see the class being associated with this HTML as BTC. So one is you can look for this class BTC. And if you go scroll up a little bit, okay, if you scroll up a little bit, okay, somewhere over here, you will see this class as ADH. Okay, this is the entire panel over here. You can see hover on this, so it will just highlight it. Okay, and inside this, you also had you also had BTC. So this BTC is nothing but this inner row. Okay, it's a table. Basically, it's making use of table layout over here. Okay, you have ADH as well. Okay, and let's say, for example, if you open this in a new window over here. So for example, the compose window is opened over here, or if you open this in a window itself, okay, then in that case, you will also have something called as a role, right? So you will have role as dialog over here. So if you scroll up over here, okay, if you scroll up, you should see role as dialog for this pop-up. Let me oops. So let me just inspect this thing. Okay. And if you come over here, if you scroll up, something like this, at the parent layout, at this outer layout, you should see role as dialog. Okay, so you can see role as presentation. This is not the one that we want. Okay, this is not what we want. Something over here. Okay, so I found the div. You can see over here, this entire div over here at the top. You can see. Okay, this is saying role is equal to dialog. Okay, so if it opens in the form of a dialog over here like this, you will see this role is equal to dialog. So we need to look for these selectors that I just showed you. Okay, and what we are going to do is we are going to come over here. Okay, so we have this added nodes, right? So whenever these changes occur, so whenever you open this as a pop-up, the DOM is modified and the nodes are added, and we have a mutation observer that watches for these changes. Right, so we are making use of mutation observers. We get the changes, and then we need to compare these changes with these selectors. And if we find if we find these changes happen, okay, what you can do is you can inject the button over here. So either on this panel you can inject the button because you know the change has occurred, right? Or on this panel. So whether it's inline compose or it's a compose in a pop-up. So that is something that you can do. Okay, so coming back to our code, since we have got the selectors, what we are going to do is over here, we have got the nodes over here. I'm going to say const over here has compose elements. So I'm creating this boolean over here. Okay, and I'm going to say added nodes dot sum over here. And within sum, I'm going to have my condition. So I'm going to say node for every node over here. Okay, we need to add certain conditions. Okay, so I'm going to say like, okay, I'll remove these round braces. I'll say node dot node type over here. Node dot node type is equal to node dot element node. Okay, now what does this mean? Okay, you can see, okay, so this is the documentation for sum over here. It's a function that accepts up to 3 arguments, and it calls a predicate function for each element in the array until predicate returns a value that is coercible to Boolean value. Okay, so sum is basically a thing that you can make use on array. Okay, and we are making use of that. So I'm saying if this node is equal to element node. Now what is this doing? This part of the code is actually checking if node is an element node, and it should be an actual HTML node, right? Not a text or a comment. So this is the line that is checking for that. Okay, and sum is basically a JavaScript based method that checks if at least one node in the array meets a specific condition. Okay, now what is a condition? Condition is the condition that we are defining it right now. Okay, so we are saying if this is true, and what we need is we also need node dot matches. Okay, it should match. What should it match? It should match dot adh. So this was a class name. I'll say comma. Okay, I'll say comma, and it should match dot b T and capital C. Okay, this was the another class that we saw, and we also saw role is equal to, I saw dialog. Okay, and we need to close this. We need to close this as well. Okay, oops, we need to close it this way. Okay, so don't make any mistakes when writing the selectors. It has to be exact as to what you saw. Okay, now after this, okay, after this we're going to say, or I'm going to say node dot query selector. Okay, and I'm also going to make use of query selector over here. Okay, now why are we making use of query selector over here? First of all, so query selector is helping us check if any of the children matches these selectors. So we are checking if the node itself matches this selector, or we need to see if any of the children matches these selectors. So what we will do is we'll copy these selectors. I'll say query selector, and I'll paste it over here. Something like this, right? And this is done, and then this is closed, and we have this closing over here as well. Okay, and this is something we need to add semicolon for. Okay, this is closing the sum part over here. Okay, this is done. Now has compose elements will give us the Boolean value whether the compose elements are found in the DOM. Okay, if the compose elements are found, what are we going to do? We are going to say if. I'm going to write if. I'll say has compose elements. Okay, and if this is done, okay, what we need to do is I'll say a log over here. Let's add a log. I'll say compose window detected, something like this. Okay, and then what we will do is we'll set a timeout. I'll say set timeout over here, timeout like this, and we'll have two things over here. So I'll mention a function that I want to call. So I'll say inject button. Now this inject button is a function that does not exist yet. We need to define this, and I'll mention call this function after 500 milliseconds. Okay, why am I adding this? So I'm just adding this timeout so that I wish to inject the button after 500 milliseconds, which is half a second. And the reason I'm doing this is I'm introducing a small delay to ensure that the Gmail compose elements are fully loaded before you are trying to add the AI button. Okay, now this inject button does not exist yet in our code. Okay, we might get errors over here. So to avoid the errors, what I'll do is I'll copy this inject button, and I'll come over here. I'll say function statement. I'll say inject button over here. Okay, and we don't need any sort of params over here, and we'll just keep it as is. Okay, so this inject button is being called, and it's being called if we are finding any of the elements that indicate that the compose button is added onto the UI over here. Okay, now what we need to do is we will start observing. So I'll say observer dot observe. Okay, I'll say observer dot observe. I'll say document dot body over here. Okay, and I'll say comma. We need to observe the document body, and I'll say child list. I'll say true over here, comma, subtree colon true. So you can see the documentation up here. What is child list? If you hover on this, set to true if mutations to target children are to be observed. Okay, so we need to of course observe the children's as well. Okay, it's a complex DOM structure that as you can see. We are setting this to true if mutations to not just target but also target's descendants are to be observed. Okay, so we need to look at child and also the descendant. So that is what we are mentioning over here. Okay, so this is something that we have added now. Now let us test our changes, and what we should be able to do is we should be able to see this console log if a compose window is added to the interface. Okay, if this is working fine, then basically everything will work fine, right? So I'll save this. I'll save all the file. I'll come over here. I'll come to extensions. I'll just reload this for safety. Okay, make sure you also reload Gmail so that the extension is loaded. You can see the email writer extension is loaded, script is loaded. I'll just clear this. Okay, now what I will do is I'll say reply over here. The moment you say reply, you will see compose windows detected, right? This is done. So this is working fine. Okay, if I pop out the reply, you will see there are now 3 events of compose window being detected, which means this is also detected. That is good. I'll just delete this. Let me add a new compose window from here. If you add this, you will see again this was added, right? So you can even clear this and see whether this is working fine. You can see it's working fine, right? So this is working absolutely okay now, and you are able to see the compose window event being triggered over here. So let's just go through whatever we have written. We are first creating a new instance of mutation observer. What is mutation observer? If you hover on this, it's a browser API that watches for changes in the DOM. Why are we doing this? Because we want to see if compose button or the compose window is being added onto the UI. And whenever the compose window is added, we need to create or inject our own AI button, right? So for that, we need to observe the changes. And that is why we are making use of mutation observer. Now, what it's doing is it is helping us with a callback, which is giving us a list of mutations. And we are iterating through this list of mutations, which are nothing but the changes. Now, mutations that we get, every mutation in this mutations has a property called added nodes. Now, added nodes is a property that contains the nodes that were added to the DOM. Okay, so we are looping in through every mutation that we have, and we are getting the added nodes over here into the form of array. And then we are checking if this added node has is basically a main node type. Okay, first of all, then we are checking if it matches any of these selectors over here. Now, these are the selectors that we just saw. These are all Gmail compose window selectors. If this condition is true, then what we are doing is we are calling inject button at the delay of 500 milliseconds, which means it's a half a second. And this allows Gmail interface to load completely. Okay. And then we are saying observer.observe over here. Okay. What is this doing is it is starting to observe the document body. So document body, the entire body it's observing. Okay. And then we are passing in a set of options over here. What are these options? Child list for true, meaning it watches for addition or removal of child items, and subtree true tells the observer that it should watch for changes in all the descendants and not just the direct children. Okay, so with these, the observer is working fine. And if you come over here, okay, I'll just end this with a semicolon. If you load the extension over here, you would see the console.log happening. Now, nothing else will happen apart from console.log, of course, because you have not done anything yet, right? You have not defined the inject function yet. Okay. So what are we going to do is we need to define all the steps over here. First is you need to create a button that looks similar to the Gmail's interface. You need to inject that button into the Gmail interface. And then on click of that button, you need to also query the backend API. And the backend API should get the email content along with the tone, and the generated reply should be shown to the user. So all that you need to do over here in the inject button. Now, what will this function have? So the first thing is it will remove any sort of existing button that we have. So here in the interface, we'll be making use of this toolbar. So this bottom part that you're seeing here in Gmail, this is the toolbar where you'll see all the buttons, okay, related to compose email. Okay, so whether this toolbar exists or not, and if this toolbar exists, is there an already injected button that exists? If it exists, then we need to remove that so that we can have, we should not have multiple buttons, right? So what I'll do is I'll come over here, okay, and I'll say, I'll first start by saying const existing button over here, and I'm going to say document dot query selector. So I'm going to make use of query selector, and I'm going to get this existing button, and this button will have a class of AI, reply, and button. So this is something that you need to decide on, what is the class that you wish to have. So if I get this button, okay, if I say I have this button, if existing button, then what you do is existing button dot remove, something like this. Okay, so we'll get rid of this button first of all if there exists a button. Okay, then we'll get a toolbar. So I'll say toolbar. Now what is this toolbar? This toolbar is the toolbar like I showed you here at the bottom. Okay, we need to get this toolbar because this is a toolbar where we are going to inject the button. So I'm going to say find compose toolbar over here. Okay, now this is a function that we need to add, find compose toolbar. Okay, this function does not exist yet. Okay, so what I will do is I will scroll up here. I'm already scrolled up. Okay, I'm going to add function find toolbar. I don't need any sort of params over here. Okay, and this function is going to help us find the toolbar. Okay, so it will just return a boolean value whether a toolbar exists or not. All right, we'll define this shortly. But if toolbar exists, if let's say toolbar exists, then I'm going to say log over here. Log is just for debugging. You can get rid of them if you don't want. Okay, I'm going to say toolbar not found, something like this. And here I'm going to say return. Okay, so this condition should be reversed. If not equal to toolbar, if toolbar does not exist. Okay, then we are saying toolbar not found and we return. Okay, if we find the toolbar, then I'll copy this. I'll say toolbar found over here. Okay, and I'll say creating AI button. Now we need to create an AI button, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say const, I'll say button over here is equal to create AI button over here. Okay, I'll just have I as caps. It looks good. Okay, and for creating AI button, I again have a function. Okay, so I'll copy this and I'll add this over here, something like this, create AI button, like so. Okay, so this is done. You come over here, this button is created. Okay, what you will do is you will say button dot class list over here. We need to add a class list to this particular button. What is the class that you wish to have? Okay, you wish to have AI button reply. So this is a class we'll add. I'll copy this and I'll paste it. AI button reply, something like this, right? And now you will add a listener to this button as well. So I'll say button dot, you can say add event listener. Okay, this is a event listener that we are adding, and we are adding a click event over here, and we'll add a async callback. Okay, so this is a function that we are adding over here. Okay, so this is now being taken care of. This add event listener will have the entire code basically to do the backend API call and basically get the response and inject it into the document object model. We'll do all of this. All right. Now over here, just outside, we will also add the button to the toolbar, right? We need to add the button. So I'll say toolbar dot, we have the toolbar, right? I'll say insert before, like so, insert before, and I'll say button, comma, toolbar dot first child, something like this. So this will be added in the beginning. Okay, and then I think we are done. Okay, so this is how the function will flow. Okay, this add event listener will be a little bit longer function. Okay, longer definition wherein we'll be making a call to the backend and we'll be getting the response. Okay, first of all, we'll start defining these functions. So find compose toolbar. Now how will you find compose toolbar, right? So if you come to Gmail UI This is a toolbar at the bottom. You can say right click, inspect. Okay, you can expand this. Here you are going to see this class BTC. If you scroll up a bit, you should see class EDH, right? So we'll get all these selectors over here. Okay, you can see these are all the selectors that we have. Okay, not these ones, the one that are representing the toolbar only. Okay, so what I will do is I'll create an array of selectors. So I'm going to say const selectors, and I'll say these are the selectors. So I'll say dot pt and C in caps. Okay, because that is how it's there on Gmail interface. I'll create dot a, capital D and H. If you're not sure of the capitalization, just copy it from the Gmail interface. I'll also add a couple of selectors over here. I'll say role is equal to toolbar. Now these also can be present, so I'm adding these as well. Okay, this is one. I'll say one more. I'll say dot G and capital U dot U up. Okay, so these are all this is a generic toolbar selector, and this is a alternative toolbar class that Gmail might use. So I'm adding this as well. Okay, now I'm going to run a for loop, and I'm going to say, oops, so not this one. I'm going to run a for loop for, okay, for I'm going to say selector. Okay, come over here. Oops, selector, and I'll say in selectors like so. Okay, for selector of selectors, something like this, and I'll get rid of this. We don't need this actually. Here I'll say const toolbar is equal to document dot query selector, and I'll say selector. I'll pass in the selector. So whichever code is matching the selector, it will return that div over here, and we'll check if toolbar exists. Then what we do is return toolbar. Okay, if toolbar exists, we return the toolbar, else we return null over here, something like this, right? So this is basically helping us. Oh, so we defined this in create AI button. We actually should be defining this not in create AI button, but I'll cut this. Okay, wrong place. We need to define this in find compose toolbar. So I moved the code over there. So we got the compose toolbar, right? Now what you need to do is we have this function. You also need to have create AI button, right? So this is something that you need to add. Now for this, you need to know the button should look like this, right? It should look like Gmail button. So I'll say inspect. Okay, and here you can see these button classes that Gmail uses. TI, JJ, JI. These are all the button classes. So what I will do is I will come over here. Okay, and I'll say const button over here. I'll create a button first of all. I'll say document dot create element. Okay, and I'll create a div first of all. Now why am I creating a div? Because you can see this button. Oops. So this button over here is being represented as a div. You can see it's being represented as a div. So I'll just replicate it. I'll say div over here, something like this. Okay, and then I'm going to say button dot class name over here. What should be the classes? So I'll come over here. I'll just double click on this. I'll copy all the classes over here. Come over here. These are all the Gmail's button classes, right? So I'll just copy this and I'll assign these classes to this button. Done. Add a semicolon. Next, I'll say button dot style and dot margin right over here. Okay. Margin right. What is margin right? I'll say 8 pixels. Okay. And then say button dot inner HTML. What is the inner HTML that we are adding? AI reply. So this is the button text, AI reply. Okay. So this is what the user will see. Okay. And then we can say button dot set role over here, or sorry, set attribute. Now what is the role of this? Role is button over here. Now why are we adding this role as button? Because if you come over here to this div for the button, you will see role is button over here. You can see, right? Role is button. It also has something called as data tooltip. Okay. And you can see tooltip is also there. So send, control enter. That is what it displays. So I'll be adding that also. Okay, you can copy this attribute and we'll say instead of role, we'll add data underscore tooltip. Okay, and here I'll say generate AI reply. So with this, what will happen is we have a button that is exactly resembling the Gmail's interface, right? So I'll return the button. Okay, so this button we have created is resembling the exact Gmail's inbuilt button. Okay, so user will think like, oh, this is actually looking like a Gmail button, and we are doing this with minimal effort, right? So yeah, this is done. Okay, we have this create AI button also being defined now. All right, now this is done over here. Okay, inject button is done. Now within inject button, or create AI button is done. Class list is added over here. Within inject button over here, we need to start working on the event listener. But I hope this is looking good, and I hope you are able to follow along so far. It's time that we start defining this event listener over here. And on click of button, what all should happen, what all actions should happen? We should do a backend API call. We should send the email content that the user is replying to. And then we should basically have the reply or the response from the backend come in, and we should inject that into the UI. So all that functionality we'll do within this function. Okay. So to begin with, we'll first have a try catch. Why are we having try catch? Because this involves a lot of things. This block will involve a lot of things like doing API call and all. So there is a chance that an exception might occur, right? So first thing, I'm going to update the button over here. So when the user clicks on generate an email reply, I'm going to say button dot inner HTML. What should be the inner HTML? Inner HTML should be generating. So there will be a little bit of delay in getting the response from the backend. So we'll show this text to the user that we are generating the email reply. And to avoid multiple button clicks, I'm going to say button disabled is equal to true, something like this. Okay, and I'll add a semicolon over here. Okay, I'll add space over here just from the formatting perspective. Okay, this is done. Now to generate an email reply, I need to get the email content. Now this is a variable that will hold the email content, and I'm not going to get the email content in this function, but instead I'm going to say get email content. Now of course this does not exist yet, but I'll be defining a separate function that will help us get the email content. This function does not exist, so I'll come over here and let me actually copy this particular thing here. Okay, let me actually copy this function. So the get email function will look similar, or get email content function will look similar to this function over here, find compose toolbar. So I'll just paste this, and instead of this, I'll say get email content over here. Okay, now what is get email content? So here we need to make use of certain selectors. We need to get the email content, and we need to trim it and send it back over here, right? We need to return it. Now, how do we get the email content? So here, this is the email content. This is a dummy email. So I'll say right click, inspect. Okay, you can see these selectors over here, LTR. Okay, and if you go inside, okay, this selector has okay, this is one. This is not a class over here. This is a class A3SAIL, right? So we'll make use of all these selectors over here, and I'll come over here. Okay, I'll say instead of .btc, I'll say h7. First of all, this is one of the selectors as well. Okay, email. This is actually the email body in the reply mode. I'll show this to you shortly. Okay, but this is one selector. Then I have a3s.eil, something like this. Okay. This is another selector. I have Gmail underscore quote over here. Okay, so I'll have Gmail. This is for quoted email. Okay, Gmail underscore quote. Okay, you can add as many selectors as you wish to. Okay, and I'll say role is equal to presentation as well. Okay, so here we're not seeing role is equal to presentation, but if you have a reply over here, okay, reply 1, let's say, if I send this as a reply, and if I check for this content over here, so this reply node is also showing this A3S and AIL selector over here. So that is what we are using. Okay, but I've added few more selectors just for the safe side over here. Okay, so this is done, and we'll come over here. I'll just add manually role is equal to presentation. Okay, so here we had added role is equal to toolbar. I'll just add role is equal to presentation, something like this. Okay, so these are all the selectors that we would need. Okay, now I have added this for loop const selector of selectors. Okay, and inside this we will say content. We'll get the content instead of toolbar. Okay, so I'll say content like so. I'll say document.query selector as selector, and I'll say if content over here. If content, what do we do? If, okay, this should be content. If content is found, then what do we do is we return the content after trimming it. So I'll say content dot inner text, and I'll say dot trim over here, and I'll return this. Okay, otherwise I'll return an empty string. So that is what I'm doing over here. Okay, so I'll remove null over here, and this is done. Okay, so we have this email content working now. Okay, and we are making use of email content over here. If you scroll down here, we are making use of email content. Okay, so we have access to the email content now. All right, if you want, you can do a console log for the email content. Okay, but now what we can do is we can make use of await. I can say fetch. We can make use of JavaScript's fetch API, and we can actually query the API, right? So I'll query the API. I'll say I'll specify the backend URL, and then I'll specify additional parameters over here. Okay, so here in Postman, you'll see this is how our backend is functioning. So this is the URL. I'll copy and I'll paste this URL here. Okay, and then over here I'll say method colon. This will be post method. Okay, and then I'll say headers. What is the header? So I'll say content type, so content hyphen type over here, and I'll say colon, and I'll say application / JSON over here. Okay, this is done. I'll add a comma, and then after header I'll add a comma again. I'll say in the body I need to send a few things. Now what do I need to send? So I'll say JSON dot stringify. Okay, and here then you'll say email content, right? So we need to pass in the email content over here. So if you come over here, okay, this is how it's passed in, right? So I'll copy this, you come over here, and I'll replace this entire thing with this. Okay, now this is the email content, so I'll get rid of this over here, and instead of that we have a variable, right? So I'll say email content. Okay, and I'll get rid of these quotes over here. We don't need quotes. Even for tone, I'll just get rid of quotes over here, and instead of friendly I'll have professional over here, professional, like this. Okay, so this is the default that I'm setting. If you want, you can give user an option to select this thing over here, whether he wants professional, friendly, or whatever. You can enhance this plugin, right? I'll add a semicolon here. Okay, so this entire thing of fetch is done until here, right? And once we get the response, what are we going to do is we are going to hold the response over here like this in the response object. Okay, now let me go down over here. Okay, after this I'm going to say if response dot okay. If response is not equal to okay, we'll check for not equal to okay. So if it's not equal to okay, I'll say throw new error, and I'll say API request failed. API request failed. Something like this. Okay, like this. And then over here, we will get the generated reply. Now, how can we get the generated reply? I'll say await and response dot text over here. I'll get the text from the response, and here I'm going to say const generated reply over here. Oops, reply, something like this. Okay, so this is being taken care of. We have the generated reply. Now what do we need to do is we need to find the compose box over here. Okay, so if you say reply, and if you say right click inspect over here, you need to find the compose box, right? Now if you come over here and if you open this by right clicking on the compose box, you will get this div, right? Now this div is basically the compose box, and you have certain properties that you can look up for using query selector. So first property is geditable is set to true. Second is role is a text box, right? So we'll get these two properties and we'll make use of query selector over here. So I'm going to say const compose box over here, and I'm going to say document dot query selector over here, like so. And then over here, I'm going to come over here and we have this geditable to true, right? And role to that of text box. So I'll copy role to that of text box over here. I'll have this added like this, okay? And I'll add one more over here. I'll say geditable is true, right? So I'll copy this entire thing. I'll come over here and I'll paste it, okay? So this is being taken care of now. We have the compose box being added here, right? So now over here, I'm going to, okay, so let me go and add a semicolon here. Now over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if compose box. So if compose box, then what do we do? So I'm going to first say compose box dot focus over here. We're going to add the focus over here, and then we are going to make use of an internal command from Gmail to insert the text. So I'm going to run this command. Okay, so first of all, we did focus because whatever like we are inserting text, it should be added in this compose box. And then I'll say document dot, oops, not query selector. Sorry, I'm going to say execute exec execute command over here, and I'm going to say insert text over here. Okay, and then I'm going to say false over here. And the next parameter I'm going to pass in is the generated reply over here. Okay. Now what does this do? So execute command is a method over here. Okay. This is a method. If you see, okay, it allows you to perform various actions on the document like formatting text, inserting content, and so on. It's a programmatic way to mimic actions, user actions like typing or applying styles without directly manipulating the DOM. Okay. Insert text tells the browser to insert the text. And then we have this false over here. This parameter is typically used for showing the UI prompt. So we don't have, this is often ignored in modern browsers. So we are passing false here, and we are passing in the generated reply. This is the actual text that we want to insert, right? So if this is done, okay, this is done, then I'm going to say else over here. After else, I'm going to add error. Okay, we can add an error. We can say compose box was not found. Okay, compose box was not found over here. Okay, was not found over here. Okay, so this is making sense now. Okay, this is done. I'll get rid of this extra line, and then we can even catch the error over here. So I'll just copy this console.error over here. I'll say failed to generate the reply. Okay, generate reply, something like this, and I'll also log the error over here. Okay, and I'll say error over here. Okay, or instead of logging the error, instead of putting in this message in the error or in the console, we can simply use alert as well. Okay, so I'll make use of alert to display this message and log, basically like the console to basically log the error. Okay, and then we need finally over here. Why are we doing finally? So that we can remove the loading state. Okay, so I'll say button dot inner HTML. Now what was the inner HTML set for the button? So we'll scroll up. So here we have set generating, and we have disabled the button to true, right? So I'll come over here and here. Okay, so here when we generate the button, where is generate? Okay, this is email content. This is the button over here. So I'll copy this. I'll come over here to finally. So this is the actual text that we had initially, and I'll also say button dot disabled. Okay, to that of true. Sorry, false. It should not be disabled now, right? So that should be removed over here. So this is added. Button is injected now, and I'll save this. Okay, let me save this, and I'll come over here. Close this. We'll reload the extension. Okay, I'll say reload. Okay, I'll delete this. I'll refresh this entire interface. Also, make sure that your backend application is up and running. So I'll just start the backend. The backend was not started. If it started for you, that's absolutely well and good, but it was not started for me. So I'm just starting the backend. The backend is up and running. Okay. Now we'll have console open over here. Okay, console. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say reply. You'll see this AI reply. You can see this looks exactly similar to this Gmail's button. You can see. So compose window is detected, toolbar has been found, and the AI button has been created. So if I say generate an AI reply, you can see generating, and then you can see, thank you for your email. Please let me know how can I assist you. Okay. So because the text is reply one, right? So that is why it's giving you this kind of a response. But let me create one more email over here. Okay, I'll add one more email. Okay, hey John here. I'll say send. Okay, so this reply is done. Okay, I'll say reply, and let me generate an AI based reply. So you can see the response over here. Okay, hey John, it was pleasure connecting with you at AWS Summit last week. My startup is progressing well. Okay, you can see it has added a placeholder here, briefly describe the current progress and so on. Okay, here you can add that. How are things with you? I'll be happy to catch up properly when you have a moment. Sincerely, Faisal. You can see how like the kind of response that it gave you. You can see how useful this is, right? So with this, what we have done is we have basically, or I should say, successfully created a functionality or an extension over here that is helping us consume the APIs, and it has basically helped us build a AI related functionality into the browser itself. So I hope you have been able to follow along, and I hope this has been useful.